VolyaRadio. Slava Ukraini!
Good morning, Kyiv. Good morning, Will. Here we go. Where'd you go? There you are. And nice.
Yeah, good morning, Kyiv. Good morning, Heather. Good morning, everybody. Retweet the space, fill up the room, all that sort of stuff, and we'll get rolling talking about all the developments related to the war in Ukraine. And hopefully, yeah, there he is. Probably plug a Smokey in here next to me eventually. If you want to talk about a specific issue, you can come up at the appropriate time, probably when we mention it as walking through the summary, and participate, ask any question you've got, or raise any issue you want with whatever Smokey says or I do, because he can be pretty controversial. That Smokey bloke, he's always coming off with something phenomenally unreasonable and incendiary, aren't you, buddy?
What? Me? Incendiary?
It's just important to
always.
know the fine line between
Always.
inflammatory and defamatory, right, Smokey?
Well, gee, really, is there a difference? Not that I notice sometimes.
Well, there is a legal one in Australia that's very important. Ask Robin; she'll tell you.
Huh.
What I know is you both like fire.
Fire, good.
Oh, we do love a bit of fire. Yes, we do. Unfortunately, there's some fire in Kyiv this morning. It hasn't been a particularly great morning in Kyiv, but good morning, Kyiv, to anybody who is listening in from there, and recognize that we are paying attention very closely to the conditions for civilians, particularly in the big cities now, that's where Russia's decided to hit, as well as all the cities close to the front line where Russia regularly continues to bomb into places that they can't reach, looking to basically level Dobrapilya now, since they know they won't take it. Basically, it looks really petty, shallow, and like a 3-year-old or a spurned lover, if you will. The way Russia goes about destroying things, even when they know they can't get them, and have obviously changed direction with regard to their attacks. And with that, with that minor rant, I'm going to go back to finishing the nest.
I helped you with part of that.
Oh man, does that mean you're my piss boy?
I could be.
Oh, don't say that. Yeah, so I've been. We've had a board meeting at VolyaRadio, and some of us complained to management too much and got put on the board to be part of management. But our new chair is actually Mockers. So say good day to Chair Mockers later in the day. And of course, Heather is now going to lead all the co-host management issues. So she can be a union delegate and complaints reception. So please, by all means, send lots and lots of suggestions and complaints to Heather if you're a co-host and you're listening in, because she'll deal with them probably better than I did when I was in that role. Anyway, I got made secretary, and I'll be keeping the notes. Since we no longer have a hall monitor position here, so the secretary will keep the formal notes and agendas and stuff and post them where everybody can see if you're part of the organization. And that's probably too much information, but I just felt like saying it for the longtime listeners that listen in and want to know anything about the background of VolyaRadio. There's 2 ways you can find out. You can listen to all the lies told about me on the internet and believe them, or you can actually fill out an application to join, and we'll show you the charter, we'll show you the org chart. You can tell us where you want to fit in. You can tell us how much time you have a week, Then you'll get the keys to the kingdom will be unlocked, and you'll get access to all the back channels, and we promise to flog you like a rented mule. Obviously, I'm still searching for a chief piss boy, and multiple minions to work for me, since I'm an evil genius. But for now, we'll just do with putting stuff in the nest myself. And I'll note also, if you're following along, I won't put as much stuff in the nest anymore as far as ads go. We're going to host all of our fundraisers on our website eventually, and we'll pick and choose a group of them to lead with and promote for shorter periods of time, 4 weeks, I think, because we want to be able to highlight and make sure everybody know that we whip support appropriately and it doesn't get burdensome to listen to or look through. If you want to find a fundraiser, you'll always be able to find them on our website. That will be new, and we also will have them rotate through the schedule here in the nest as usual. Smokey, are you back up?
I think he's working on it.
I've just added him as speaker. Anyway, I'm going to disappear. Let Heather do the congratulations, Heather, and I'm going to let Heather do the timestamp and finish filling the nest.
And there, I was all nice to you and stuff. Jeez.
Yeah, never do that. It'll always come back. The scorpion and the frog, sweetheart.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, I'm still waiting for that $10,000 donation that you were going to make in my name.
I love how these explode up in value each time we get talked to about them. She's a pocket picker.
Yeah, I've had that reputation for a while. And it is currently Sunday, July 26th in most of the world, but not all the world. So let's check out what time it is where. In Velvet Bottom in the UK, it is 6:07 a.m. And in Wank, Germany, it is currently 7:07 a.m. In Ukraine, in New York, Ukraine, it is 8:08 a.m. In the workers' paradise of Useless Loop, Australia, it is 1:08 p.m. In Fukuoka, which I know I just pronounced totally wrong, thank you, John, it is 2:08 p.m. And in Australia, in Bumbunga, Australia, it is 2:38 p.m. In Sausage Gully, Australia, it is 3:08 p.m. And in Conception Bay, Newfoundland, it is 2:38 a.m. And in, let's see here, Satan's Kingdom, Massachusetts, where I hear they like to choke some chicken, it is 1:08 a.m. In Hooker, Oklahoma, it is 12:09 a.m. Now, back on Saturday, July 25th, it is currently 11:09 p.m. in Uranus Peak, Idaho, and it is 10:09 p.m. in Wankers Corner, Oregon, and it is 9:09 p.m. in Eek, Alaska, where Sarah Palin can see Russia from her house. She quit stalking me, and that's all I got to say about that. Now, we will get a Smokey back here as soon as possible, but he seems to be having some trouble.
I've got the nest packed already.
Look at that. Good job. Look at that, getting more efficient and stuff.
See, get me a piss boy and it can turn into a whole new VolyaRadio around here. Anyway, let's see if I've got our superb researcher. Every now and then I get a report that my co-host is sick or can't show up alongside me. And when it's Smokey, I always go, "Holy shit! Is his leg come off? Do I still get his summary?" But I think he brought it with him today, and we'll see how he's going. Smokey, are you up?
I'm trying.
Sounds like you are.
Well, various of my exes considered me trying, and I suppose that's why they're exes.
Wow, testify, brother.
But in any event, yeah, I do have a summary tonight, and man, it's been a busy day for me. Off running around, chasing my current spouse, and reading things. I did manage to get the time in for a summary. I wanted to try to dig up some of the current stuff happening in Kyiv with the attacks tonight. I didn't actually get that into my summary, but we could start off talking about some of the general stuff before we get into that. So, geopolitical news, starting from the top, shall we?
Yes, indeedy, we shall.
All right. Well, things are heating up with the CSTO. Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev publicly urged Putin to freeze the war and to return to Istanbul for talks. And this is
There's
one
a
of
video
the
up in the nest for you folks to follow along if you want to. While Smokey's talking.
yeah. So and it's one of the most direct appeals yet from a Moscow-aligned Central Asian leader. Notable considering that Kazakhstan has also been forced to cut oil production due to Ukrainian strikes, disrupting transport. Can we say Novorossiysk? So that there's about 900,000 barrels a day of Kazakh oil, which is not leaving the Black Sea as a consequence of that. So there's there's more to go over with that in a bit, but that's
Well,
just what we have at the start.
I file that under nobody's afraid of you anymore, Putin, and that's why I put the video and the still up there. He's a shrinking example of himself anymore when he sits with a world leader like Tokayev, and yeah, Kazakhstan is suffering due to the war, not being able to move oil through Russia. They've closed their borders to keep Russians from coming in and fueling up and stealing all the fuel that they do get, because Russia is still a major supplier of theirs under long-term contract, and he's basically willing to say directly in front of Putin with no preparation at all that you ought to stop the war, and that he has a hard time understanding still what it's about, right? Which is a very good dig on Putin, because
Yeah.
all the things that they've published about the reasons for the war are absolute garbage.
Well, the other Russia aligned republics out there that have been formerly part of the Soviet Union are becoming decreasingly credulous of Russia's goals with this. And especially with Russia's ability to actually fulfill them, to actually achieve them. And so and as they are still pretty tightly coupled with the Russian economy, and they are watching the Russian economy, well, it's not just circling the drain at this point. It is in the process of being sucked down into it. That it is there's going to be knock-on effects for all of them as well. And this is going to, and there are some places where this is going to create a great deal of instability. Can you say Chechnya? I'm sure sure you can, because that is going to be one of the places, if there's a general economic retreat combined with this, will affect Russian military readiness. And really, about the only reason that that the puppet state that currently exists in Chechnya is still there is because of Russian support.
Oh,
So you
vast
take
amounts of money. Vast amounts of money he pumps into
yeah.
Chechnya to keep influence there.
Yeah. So, and that tap is going to dry up very shortly. And I guarantee you that there are going to be some changes at the executive level when that money supply runs out. There are all sorts of people waiting in the wings who would really, really like to displace the current leadership. So
In
this
Chechnya,
is,
you reckon that any of the strong men that are still there are in a position and would like to challenge?
it's less, I think, strongmen and more, I think, families. I don't have specific.
Right. One of the family clans. Then, yeah, fair enough. I would have thought. Now I don't know anything about it, but I would have thought Kadyrov would have either follow on paid those people off or eliminated them through violence and coercion to make sure he wasn't ever going to be at risk once he got into power. But I fully agree with you. Look, Ishkeria, I think, is what Chechnya was called before. And with the President Dudayev there, it's a pity that guy isn't still around, because there's probably Chechens who would like to be good for their country and have an altruistic bone in their body, and they're
Yeah.
not all thieves and uh, uh, violence-driven clan sort of activity. A real statesman should come
Oh,
to pass there, as existed before.
well, they're mostly not thieves. Let's be clear about that. They what happened there, so many decades ago is a direct consequence of Russia's corruption, not Chechen corruption.
Oh
Though
yeah, yeah.
there,
I didn't mean the Chechen people generally. I meant the leaders that they got
yeah,
installed. Yeah.
yeah. So, but yeah, and so Kadyrov and his clan, exploited that and managed to be, the debris that floated to the top. And there are other clans out there. They may or may not be as ruthless or as corrupt as Kadyrov and his group are, but there will be a change. There will be an opportunity for people to try to at least partly get out from under the authoritarianism. We'll see what happens, and there are other places, other ways in which this is going to play out. I'm certain that there will be a significant impact in Georgia. That with how things are going now, Putin is not going to be able to maintain the level of pressure that he's put that country under for such a very long time. So there's going to be, and there's also going to be instability, and there are going to be I think, some new Central Asian powers that will emerge. Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan being among them. Now, one thing this is just sort of long term. One aspect of this is both of those have ethnic groups which are primarily Turkic in origin, and so these are places where Turkey has actually been trying to spread influence ever since the fall of the wall, and the dissolution of the Soviet Union. So it will, with a further decline of Russian influence, we may see a resurgence in Turkish influence over some of these regions because of a perceived common ethnic commonality. But we'll see what happens. But the Turks have actually been doing investing in these places for quite some time, and considering in particular, the world stage with the challenges with fuel and everything else like that, Turkey doesn't have a lot of its own organic sources of petroleum. So being friendly with Azerbaijan is actually a really good thing for them, because that has the potential pretty much of ensuring all of their fuel supplies going forward if they can arrange it. So lots of places to watch, lots of things that are going to change over the next 6 months to a couple of years. So shall we move on?
Yes, please.
All right. So previously announced that he was thinking about it. Well, apparently Zelenskyy will travel to Washington this coming week to attend the funeral of Lindsey Graham. He's expected to meet President Trump, and the trip will follow Zelenskyy's meeting with Raytheon executives on the 23rd. So they are going to. There's an approved agreement between Raytheon and Ukraine for Ukraine to produce Patriots domestically. Now, it can't happen soon enough.
There's also a written agreement now between Ukraine and the United States to set up a drone factory inside America to make Ukrainian technology there under a DoD contract too, isn't there?
Yes, there is, and it's going to be.
So it could be a big signing ceremony trip. Hey.
Yeah, it could be, and of course, Trump loves to be able to trot himself out and saying, "I'm creating business," You know,
Do you
so
think they'll throw that that bill for Lindsey Graham's sanctions bill on the table and get it signed by Trump at the same time?
there may be some pressure for that. And and when you consider what some of the former, you consider Loomer and White, and they're flipping around to saying, oh, support Ukraine. Um, that they're going to be dragging a certain amount of popular support and attention with them, which is the sort of thing that the existing city Republicans are going to be paying attention to. I can imagine them potentially falling in line to the point where they decide to actually try to move this along because
Yeah,
they think
I
they can
don't
make
think they'll get
political
it.
capital with it.
I don't think they'll get it done in time, though, will they? Because the House went ahead and went on holidays, and if the Senate made any
Yeah.
changes to that bill at all before passing it, it'll have to go back to conference and final approval over on that side. And I'm not sure if it's a
Well,
funding bill or not, if there's anything in it. But it might have to finish in the House, and the House went on leave.
Well, there's also the thing is though is even if they have to do that, there still could be something done with great fanfare with with Tillis inviting Zelenskyy to the Senate while they actually go through the final vote to approve the bill, even if it still has to go back through reconciliation before it can be signed. So that I can see some political theater playing out with that.
So while
You
I
know,
would normally say a trip of this nature for Zelenskyy to make to America after the people have been, the Russians have been talking to them and whatever, and he'll come over to America, I would have thought, waste of his time, as I've said before. But this time, I guess, if they're going to sign multiple agreements, one of which is multiple manufacturers from Ukraine will provide 10 full built systems each and put them into this DoD factory that's going to be building a drone countermeasure and drone superiority lab or whatever they call it. And this from the president who said, "We don't need it. We're not getting any help from Ukraine on drones. We got the best drones ever. They don't need them at all." Love it. I love him. I love signing that agreement. Might make sure we have fanfare on that one. And the other agreement, uh, 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 I think it could be a good trip, valuable trip for Ukraine for a change, even though they're not really getting anything that much new, and that bill, but that bill, the Russians absolutely do not want that bill to be passed. Smokey, apparently they haven't read it because, to be honest, I'm not that happy with it. But the Russians are going to pull out the stops, they say, and prevent that from coming up if they can in America for signing, because the sanctions they never complain about but are always the first thing they want taken off the table. They don't want any more of those passed, even though they don't hurt them at all. Smokey, the sanctions don't hurt Russia at all.
yeah. Well, in any event, it will be, I think, at least neutral, possibly positive, which is going to be a refreshing change from events in the past. Moving on, and this is actually something that is playing out now as we speak, is with Zelenskyy warned that there could be that Russia has readied missiles for a massive new strike. Well, it wasn't as massive as in the past, but I'm looking at the news right now, indicating that at least a half dozen Iskander ballistics were fired and targeting the Solomyansky district in Kyiv. So we've got fires breaking out in an industrial area. Now, apparently, there were some Patriots fired in this, and they actually intercepted two of the incoming ballistics. So that in that at least there is some good news. But it does seem that four did land, and apparently, in this case, hit an industrial area. Beyond that, I really don't have any additional information. Have you seen anything more about this, Will?
So yeah, the three Iskanders that hit apparently struck a warehouse, a Nova Pochta facility, but we could do a compare and contrast on who's doing what to who's Nova Pochta type facilities or Wildberries. I think Ukraine got out of it close to how Yekaterinburg did yesterday. Hit the warehouse and 10 cars and a truck in the parking lot. We'll see how much damage was done to the facility as the day goes on. But debris from one of your shoot downs, the debris from one of those flew into the side of an 18-story building and did some damage at level 7 and 8. But all told, I think three of the 6 got shot down, and that's pretty good news. And it's just more Russian terror attacks. Except I guess I'll give them the Nova Pochta facility. Go on, please proceed. You were doing them all anyway, But I'll say that Russia managed to find one militarily significant target out of a couple of weeks of work.
Well, and they didn't hit it square, even then, judging from the fact that it apparently landed in the parking lot.
Much like at Yekaterinburg.
Yeah, so we're looking at that Russia's vaunted lack of CEP is coming into play yet again. So and as I've said in the past, a lot of these missiles at this point, with the guidance systems and then also Ukrainian countermeasures, when they're being fired, they are being pretty much being sent to whom it may concern. That we're looking at them just simply trying to land in the same postal code, not necessarily in the same block. So, this is probably, we're going to see more of this play out in the future.
Yeah.
So
I'll interrupt you there briefly. I think another. Hey, Alex, how are you, buddy? How you holding up? Good to talk to you. I haven't spoken to you. So sorry to hear about Dennis.
Yeah, so obviously not too good, because I'm I'll be well. Unfortunately, sometimes Russians don't screw up, and sometimes Ukrainians do. So there was and they didn't miss yesterday. So the announcement is that there were 10 killed with about 100 wounded. The 10 killed is wrong. They didn't find Dennis's body till later. Apparently, he tried to tourniquet his own leg and managed to walk quite far away from the site. Obviously, they're used to double taps. But no, unfortunately, that didn't work. So he bled out further away from the scene. So the number announced of dead was 10. I thought I was in the all clear. But no, they found his body later. Yeah, so there's an investigation that will be happening in terms of why that event was in that location, why there wasn't sufficient provision for, why they didn't select a site which had sufficient, basically bomb shelters that you could get to, because they would have noticed that something was coming in. But if you can't get to shelter in time, there's not much. And it wasn't just one missile. So, once again, this is scuttlebutt. You don't know what's actually happened. Apparently, it was 5 targeted the site. Only 1 got intercepted of those 5 that were sent. So, yeah, unfortunately, 11 people died. I know one personally. He's a friend. I learned a lot about electronic warfare from him. I remember being potentially at a nearby place to where that was. I remember him coming up to me, I heard you had a rough ride against the EW team from the Unmanned Systems Forces. I was like, who were red teaming me. And he was just like, all right, let's go for your configs. He's like, okay, yeah, I'll adjust your settings, flash to this version of VolyaRS, and if you go again, you should be fine. But hopefully at some point, the world will hear about all of the stuff he has done. He was doing some freaking crazy experiments with my giant drones, like having my giant drone carry another drone and then do all sorts of things. But yeah, some of the stuff he did literally led to some legendary Ukrainian successes in drone warfare. So his loss is a tragedy. I've got another friend out here who fights for Ukraine. And he said his former CEO, his oldest friend in Ukraine, is also amongst the dead. So Peter and Dennis, pouring one out for them today, and yeah, we'll have to go and bury another friend at some point. Really sucks, because I literally I walked past the first friend I've buried in Ukraine. A guy called Pez, British guy, Christopher Perryman, and literally got back to the hotel and opened my laptop, and then breaking news comes out while I'm on my laptop, and I just lost my mind because I'd just come from another defense tech event where a friend of mine was at. He's in Azov, and also I just clocked that another friend from Zigazpur was there as well, and I was just like, did I just not hear it because I was in the hotel? Did they actually just hit my friends? It turned out it wasn't that site. There are lots of drone tech conferences in Ukraine. But yeah, I thought I was in the all clear. I mean, I still want to throttle that guy from Azov for not picking up the effing phone when I called him. But they were okay. But unfortunately, it turned out that 11 people are dead. And given the other guy I know and what he does, if he has that higher praise for his friend that died, and given what I know my friend did, Ukraine lost some of the some of its most innovative drone pilots yesterday, unfortunately. So sometimes the Russians don't get it completely wrong. So they had their targeting right. They sent enough missiles to get through and guarantee an effect. So they sent the good stuff, which is why most of them got through. So unfortunately, you've got to respect the enemy, and that means don't do stupid shit in terms of where you have gatherings and where you do testing. So
the enemy always, as you say, the investigation is going on there. I know the organizer's already been given a citation to appear, I guess, for something. I saw the photograph of him getting that, and he's in a secure hospital bed, it looks like. So we'll see as the investigation goes, but it obviously looks like poor planning, poor communication, and possibly failure to meet all the tests of what you're required to do in that situation, in consultation with I think the security service. But we'll find out. It's an absolute tragedy, though.
This event was not like a sanctioned event. Just randomly, I had a meeting with a principal from Brave One, and he was just like, yeah, none of our people were there. None of our companies were there. We had nothing to do with this. And he's like, thank God, because it's like, this is an absolute clusterfuck of failures.
Yeah, to be all the independents like you and Dennis. And, there's a lot of really smart independents working in the fields that you see when you're down at a defense tech conference and you're down at the pub or, wherever, restaurants and things. You see the same sort of people all over the place. I went to one event that was they were going to do some filming for a handover of some stuff from one company, and hell, it was Frontline Kit was there, Zigazpur was there, multiple other suppliers, and one of the military units, and had that gotten out widely, it's the sort of thing that could so easily happen, but you just have to be phenomenally careful with your personal security. And you can't advertise. I don't know if it was advertised on the web or whatever, but yeah, failure to secure and hold it in the appropriate place. It's a real unfortunate tragedy. And we'll see how the investigation comes out, because we'll never bring the folks back.
Someone put it on social media. By the sound of it, there are international people there. In terms of the things that international companies are taught before they go to Ukraine, there is nothing about OPSEC. I know this from experience because I was doing a trial. Actually, the event where Dennis came up to me and was like, "Yeah, I heard you're having a problem against EW Red Team." But yeah, a week before that event, another company announced on TV that they were going to Ukraine to do a drone trial next week. And a Kiwi mate of mine, his dad saw it back in New Zealand, called his son and said, hey, are those guys you're working with, are they possibly involved in this? And he was just like, well, I'm not in that trial. I go and fly with Alex with other units and we do our own trials. But yeah, that's Alex. And it was like, yeah, this is on the news. Like, that doesn't seem very smart. Obviously, I raised a complaint with this to UK Mod, and just like, that's the kind of they make you do all sorts of training. Like, one of the things, like, you have to do a dangerous environment training course before you go to Ukraine, or you're disqualified. You have to buy Stanag level plates before you go to Ukraine, or you're disqualified. And it's like, Well, I'm out in random fields in the east flying with units. I'm already here. I didn't know this before you sent that email out. So obviously they backpedaled a bit, and I had to do this online
Mm-hmm.
course about hazardous environments. And it's about stuff like, how to behave at checkpoints so you don't arouse suspicion or get hassled. And it's like they go, what are you talking about? If I go to a checkpoint in Ukraine and they see I'm coming here and I got a whole load of drones to fly with their units, they don't just want to shake my hand and take selfies. it's like, what are you talking about? And then there's all this other stuff. But what they don't cover is OPSEC. Like, don't
Yeah.
effing put on social media where you are going. Like, sure, social media is part of this war. I'm a cartoon dog of the internet. I understand that. But post it after you've gone when you know no one is there. Very
Exactly.
basic stuff.
Exactly.
But that's not even part of the course.
I mean, I'm totally unimportant, but I used information, good information, personal hygiene, if you will. Don't carry this phone certain places. Use a local phone. Don't talk about where you're going. Talk about where you've been. Minimize your exposure to people who might be watching and want to do bad things. Yeah, it just makes stuff. I mean, I knew that some of that from my military experience, the military police. But I just asked a few questions of our security friends over in Ukraine before I went over, and did that too. But you're right; they should probably offer or require everybody that's coming over, if they're working in the drone area like you are, to actually hand them a security questionnaire of things. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Don't do this, that kind of thing. It's probably not as obvious as it could be. But you'd think everybody who was going would be thinking about the fact that you're going to a war zone. And while it's not particularly dangerous, believe it or not, it's not particularly dangerous. It is phenomenally unforgiving of bad mistakes like that. Anyway, it's a pity, Alex. I'm so sorry that's happened to Dennis. I wish you well, buddy. I wish I was over there to sit with you for a while, but I'm not. So I'll do it here, and I'll talk to you about a whole bunch of really bad shit that happened in Russia. Prince.
Yeah, before we go off the subject, first of all, another Alex, I'm really, really, really sorry to hear this, and it's awful. And this also hit in another way. We found out that Igor Stolovly, the head of Stratcom Center, that his wife was actually killed in that also. Her name was Valentina Savastika, and she was killed yesterday by the Russian missile strike. She was a mother and head of the International Cooperation and Strategic Comms at the State Guard, at the Ukrainian State Guard. I put a tweet up in the nest from Jason Smart, and this is actually one that I got privately in a group also, but what is included in there is a Facebook link where Igor shares his feelings and his thoughts and what he wants you to know about his wife and the mother of his children, and a pretty amazing woman. So I don't want to take away or discount at all Dennis in any way, but there were a lot of people who lost their lives, and this is another one, and it's just absolutely awful. So big hugs. I'm not a big drinker, but I'd pour one out with you. I'll pour some club soda out.
Yeah. So another that strike and another strike today on Ukraine. Fortunately, I don't see any reports of injured and dead in the strikes on Kyiv today, which is good news. Just property damage, and we can essentially deal with that. Smokey, what's next up on your list?
Well, let's see here. Well, here's some good news. The EU's 21st sanctions package is now in the process of being implemented, with notably creative enforcement tools beyond the standard entity listing approach. So, among those things are additional shadow fleet vessel seizures, financial network measures aimed at at closing off loopholes, evasion loopholes that have been identified, and crypto exchange curbs. So the sanctions now are starting to chew into what had been previously, I think, kind of the gray zone.
Yeah, and
And
also include some implementation guidelines that are helpful as well. That it directs. I've long talked about the fact that if you wanted to get into the business of seizing these ships that are sanctioned vessels, you could do so, and it could be a tidy little earner for you under international maritime law. And essentially, what they are doing here in this sanctions package by adding the guidance is saying what I've told you all along, which is member states can seize and sell cargo, including oil or grain or anything else on the if there's a reason it shouldn't sit and stay on the vessel. It's a very easy test to make. You're then allowed to sell that material, put the money into escrow, and then if the vessel is brought up to scratch, brought into compliance, and pays all the dues and everything that are due for it, then it after it pays those back, it can get the value for its cargo back out of escrow. But they're restating essentially what I've told you all along is capable of being done. If you just But with multiple states essentially saying it in a sanctions package, they're reaffirming what's in maritime law that everybody's agreed to, including Russia, I might add. The other thing is interesting, in addition to the vessel numbers that have been added, is they've frozen the oil price cap at $44 a barrel for a full
yeah,
year, not meaning that it won't rise automatically on the calculation they've got in there, as it was due to do. It was due to rise to 58. They're going to leave it down at 44, and have added these capabilities to enforce the sanctions package. And this is what's really important, I think, Smokey, that 21 sanctions packages. Now we're already talking about the 22nd, and I'd love to see
yep,
aluminum, whatever, but just enforcing the 21 sanctions package that we have in place now would do a whole lot more good than adding sanctions at this point. I feel.
yep. Oh, and I still have. I'm going to say this one more time. Letters of marque.
Oh yeah, I'd love to
Ukraine
see
needs to
that.
issue letters of marque. I really want to see that. Because there's nothing like giving a capitalist incentive to uh, to join in on gunboat diplomacy. I mean, I think it could be just lovely. Um, and they're just and it's potentially it's such a target rich environment.
And
But
you won't
and
have to seize that many vessels, or not that many vessels would have to be taken as stateless, but under letters of marque or whatever. If however you want to do it, you wouldn't have to sanction. You wouldn't have to pull that many vessels in and seize them in order for Russia to also decide to stop doing this. Look at how
mhm,
quickly Ukraine got Russia to realize that it wasn't going to run the blockade of Crimea with a fleet of
mhm.
cargo vessels and tankers. They simply blew them out of the water, burned them to the waterline, and the strait is that end of the sea is essentially 100% clear, except for one vessel that's still smoldering a couple of weeks on, Smokey.
Yes,
When I say
yeah.
burn to the waterline, those tankers, they literally did, and it didn't get unstable, and it has burned all the way to the waterline, but it's still smoldering.
Yeah, the thing I think about with letters of marque, because you've got you've got these vessels all over hell and gone. They're all over the world, and somebody taking a letter of marque and actually seizing one of these things and proceeding then to motor it into a sympathetic port of convenience could convert that vessel into literally tens of millions of dollars.
Oh, legally. Yeah,
So
imagine
legally,
if Somali pirates who are generally nasty were to seize some Russian Shadow Fleet vessels, take them into the closest port, and then they could legally sell the grain that was on those
legally
things.
sell them. So Somali pirates, if you're listening, say, ask Ukraine for some letters of marque, and you can actually go legit. Hey, and there are a lot of Shadow Fleet tankers in the Indian Ocean, a lot of them. So, but in any event, but you get my point. Is that there's nothing like a profit incentive to actually motivate people to potentially do the right thing. Now, admittedly, there's ways that we could be creating a monster here. Especially with the way the world is changing. But I still find the idea very entertaining.
As do I. I would find it more entertaining if the countries in the EU themselves started seizing and impounding vessels this way. But you're right. That's why I mean it's not unthinkable that what you propose could happen, and if any of the Ukraine's allies that are on the Baltic won't be willing to do it, I'd love to see anybody do it, and because I'm telling you, you wouldn't have to seize more than 20 of these vessels, probably 30 of these vessels, before Russia would decide that activity is no longer tenable and would get out of the business. And these are environmental time bombs, I might remind you, right?
Yeah.
We saw one burning, finally sinking and leaking oil off of Oman the other day. One's also burned and leaked oil in Malaysia about a year and a half ago. I mean, but the one in Oman is looking to be a massive disaster if that breaks up. So, and I've said, as when I first started talking about this 2024, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when one of these major things causes a major disaster, and when it does, it's off your shore. You're going to pay because they aren't insured, and there's no way you're ever going to get the money out of Russia. These people have their hand in your pocket risk-wise, and this infuriates me that we let this practice go on, because the longer this practice goes on, the more the Chinese, the Indonesians, the Indians, anybody else who's in the business and is in the race to the bottom cost-wise has to start doing the same thing. Otherwise, you're going to run them out of business. So I don't want to go this way. This way leads to the end of all the legislation we've done with the laws of the sea since 1967. And I, for one, am not up for that.
100% agree with you. So shall we move on to the ground war?
Yes, please. I'll just say, Smokey, and get your comment on it if you've looked at it before. One of the things on the ground war, in addition to what Smokey's going to tell you, is I put Clement Molin's analysis of Konstantinivka, who holds Konstantinivka up the nest. Smokey probably talked you through a fair bit of it, but you can watch along as he's talking if he gets into that, because it's really superb analysis.
It is, yeah. Clement does a really good job with that. I haven't actually looked at it specifically, and I haven't really looked at the details of his of what he's done. But I'll go ahead and bring it up, and we can actually chew that over.
Yeah, okay.
But
I've read it in detail.
Cool. I'll hand it off to you and actually do some commentary then when we get around to it. So just thinking about the last 24 hours, the MOD has recorded 202 engagements on July 25th. The heaviest area of activity was Pokrovsk with 35 Russian assault group attempts, particularly around Shakhovsov-Ivka and Rudinsky, Hirishny and Udachi. The Ukrainians claim approximately 50 personnel killed, 22 wounded just in that one day, and they apparently nabbed an ammunition depot and a couple of artillery systems towards up north in Sloviansk. Now, Sloviansk is one of the places where the Russians are trying to make a significant push. They're actually redirecting some forces, and I think there's multiple reasons for this. One is uh, I don't think they can really get forces to the south the way that they were. So the the pushes that they had been doing, around Huliapoli, and then also now near Kamyansky, and trying to push towards Orkiv generally. I do not think that they can actually generate the force down there to actually really uh, take any kind of effective offensive action. So I think they're shifting further north, and it makes sense because once again, what Russia really wants to do is they want to take the fortress city belt, and that's really kind of that's the holy grail for Putin right now, because I think he believes that if he can actually seize the rest of the Donbass and seize these cities, that he can actually declare victory and go home. So we're going to see a significant escalation, I think, over the next few months, especially if we have uh, mobilization taking place, which actually we will see mobilization announced and taking place in September in Russia. That it's going to be in these areas that we're going to see the largest increase in force generation, and the largest increase in offensive activity.
And
No, so but
Magar's Birds reports that in fact the numbers you're talking about, the assault numbers in the front, have jumped 18% in July versus May,
mhm.
and jumped from May and June have both gone up, and so they're sending these ones and twos still, but in more ones and twos, which has meant that
Yeah.
the numbers of assault groups have gone up. In the attacks you're talking about, but also the amount killed has gone up. So
No.
they're not getting through.
Well, and they're actually, and I'd say they're sending more fives to tens rather than just twos to, or threes. Now we're seeing larger numbers in each group, and case in point, the the armored assault that Azov stopped in Dobropilia, a couple of days ago. So, and here this is well, it's actually not Drobopilia per se, but actually one of the villages on the approach to that. And this is like right at the edge of the fortress belt that Ukraine built. So Russia is trying to right now chew through the same kind of defenses that Ukraine was trying to go through when they launched their offensive in 2023. So when Ukraine was trying to breach the Surovikin line, Russia's trying to do the equivalent of breaching that now with the assaults they're making towards Dobropilia, and they need to do that because that's how they have to do that to push the Ukrainians out of other places along that fortress belt. So, and to that effect, they actually went to trying to do a conventional combined arms assault.
And how'd that
So
go?
they actually, well, let's see. Well, they lost 9 tanks and 2 AFVs in the first pass, and then I think they lost 7 tanks and 6 AFVs in the second one. So they've been losing armor at a rate that is similar to how quickly they were losing it in 2022. At least, and specifically because of armored assaults, and those numbers don't include the 40 to 50 odd light vehicles, unarmored vehicles, that also got shot up in the process of the Russians trying to carry out this assault. So and those two assaults, just those two alone, chewed up the better part of 2 companies. Just erased the better part of 2 full companies of Russian troops. Most of a battalion. Just that alone, right there.
And most
And
of them
certainly
to
the armor
drones
losses.
still, because as Magyar also reported, the USF pilots are up to killing an average of 365 a day, and are
Yeah,
closing into the end of the month of July to 11,000 this month.
yeah. They're turning into the primary killing arm of the military.
And I'll note their
And
target was beyond 10,000 a month, but they're actually going to get to 11,000 this month.
Yeah, they're definitely pushing further than they expected, and there's multiple reasons for that. So anyway, the Russians are trying to push, towards Drovopia, further, and this is pretty much from Pokrovsk up to Sloviansk is really where I'd say the lion's share of the Russian offensive activity is taking place right now. That's where they really are trying to do their push. So the Ukrainians pushed back 21 assaults near Sloviansk. They pushed back 24 assaults near Konstantinivka. And the Russians are also, and that's the other thing also that I didn't mention, is that those armored assaults were accompanied by a prodigious number of glide bombs, Russian glide bombs. The Russians were merrily tossing many, many fabs, in the direction of the Ukrainian fortifications, prior to this. So they're trying to, and it's kind of erratically, because one of the problems that you've got with the fabs, with the glide bombs that the Russians are using, they are reasonably accurate, but they are not accurate enough to do a lot of the kind of very direct strikes that you need for close air support. Close air support, traditionally is, an A-10 going down a road and emptying the magazine if it's 30 millimeter autocannon, Gatling, on a column of vehicles on a road. It's it's a Ka-52 popping up and shooting up a bunch of bunkers or a bunch of armored vehicles that are deployed, getting ready for an assault. It's an Su-25, a frogfoot, popping in and dropping a bunch of weapons or missiles on a target of opportunity that somebody's identified. That's not what Russia is doing right now. That this is no. You normally, when you talk about close air support, it's the sort of thing that you have a forward air controller who is sitting there saying, "I got a target. I need who's available. I need I need ordnance on these coordinates now." And that's what traditional close air support is. And that's not what really is happening. What we're doing here with the fabs is these are attacks on what are essentially our static positions. This is not stuff that's dynamic. And it's not stuff really where Russia is able to use the equivalent of forward air control, embedded in some sort of a mobile group to actually identify targets, knock them out so that they can permit whatever the unit is to actually move forward.
But I will say, also based on Clement Milan's plotting of before, that their pilots are getting incredibly accurate through practice at landing these fabs uh, directly on lines of tree lines and stuff, making perfect lines
Yeah,
down them, to hope, to try to get whoever is there. It doesn't mean they got everybody in each shot, but they are getting very,
well,
very good at placing those things, which is why I want to see them all die on a runway, Smokey.
I want to see them die in fire. Yeah. Well, the thing is that's they're able to hit a fixed target, but it's still, to a certain degree, it's still addressed to whom it may concern,
Right. Is it
because
we
they do
think
not
somebody's
necessarily.
here? It looks like there's fortifications in this tree line. Just drop one every 5 meters down that tree line.
Yeah, and I've actually seen a video, and this was a video of somebody, of some Ukrainians who are actually in a bunker when a Fab 1500 basically got dropped and landed and detonated within about 50 meters of their bunker. I mean, just shook everything to hell.
In new
And
shorts.
and they, yeah, and they it showed them walking out afterwards and taking pictures of this, you know 20-meter diameter crater that's like 5 meters deep, that's like immediately adjacent to their position. So that puts it in perspective for me.
You would honestly feel a bomb that big within 50 meters. You'd feel the shockwave go through you, and it would feel like a heart attack, if you know what I
Yeah,
mean. You'd feel it push. What the shockwave would move through your heart and your lungs, and you'd actually feel it upsetting your rhythm. To which you think, "Holy shit, am I dead?" But it's because the shockwave would be so huge. But it wouldn't. It would if you are close enough to some of those bombs, just the shockwave will kill you. But
yeah,
if you're in a fortified position like that, uh, you really got to know when those are coming in because they can burst your eardrums. You can get a bloody nose. You could it would just you definitely need to change your shorts and your hearing would be gone
yeah,
for a long period of time. But
yeah,
you can live through it, is what I'm saying. But massive, massive, keep your head down weapons.
definitely. Yeah. Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to share like an anecdote I heard, which I thought it's like so Russian and also so Ukrainian. So, in terms of the targeting, one of the things that Ukrainian ISR drone pilots would essentially look for litter because the Russians would just literally just not clean up after themselves and just leave crap all around their positions. But then the Ukrainians were issued instructions: don't clean up after yourselves, because they found out that the Russians were using the fact that Ukrainians, when they took a position, would clean it up because it's like it's their land and they don't want to see their land like that. So the Russians would use the fact that the Ukrainians are clean and that if an area was suspiciously clean, it probably meant there are Ukrainians there. So yeah, there was the troops, soldiers were specifically told, I know you want to do this, but don't do it. They're going to basically look for cleanliness as a sign of Ukrainians being there, because we look for essentially trash and trash behavior to find Russians. So just thought I'd share that anecdote.
Exactly. Exactly. We were always taught in the army to tidy up after yourself because the enemy will find your waste trails and your garbage dumps and everything. It was always police call, clean everything up and keep it tidy. So, yeah, the interesting. Russia's doing the opposite of that, which makes it's very Russia day absurd. But wouldn't the great way to counter that another be clean up the positions? Uh, Clean up your position and the one next to you, right? If you're, or you could clean up lots of positions, and then only sit in three of them, and Russia would think you're in all of them. And
Yeah, so
and
I'm just sharing this because this is really old information. So there's
no,
like
it's
no,
good.
it's just like I don't. If I did know what they were doing now, I wouldn't tell you for obvious reasons. So I think it's best that
Yeah.
we don't know. But I'm just sharing that because it's very old. But I just
Yeah,
thought it was
but I
a nice
remember
anecdote.
talking to Chuck and Smokey actually back in Maria Report days to Chuck Farrer about the fact that we were looking at video and looking at the conditions in which Russians were living in these positions and go, these positions are so easy to spot because they're not doing any policing up of their material. So, but it's bizarre, isn't it? It's upside down world looking at how they look at it, Smokey.
Yeah, I think that the key takeaway here is when you occupy a position, change nothing. And so you just leave it in exactly the state that you find it. That what is going to show up is where things appear to change. So as a Ukrainian, one of the tricky bits that I would look at would be, go clean up a position that I'm not going to occupy.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, don't bother cleaning up the position I am going to occupy, but really don't make
Clean up
any
a bomb
changes.
magnet.
Yeah, so you basically clean up, you make it look like there's activity someplace, so it actually starts to draw activity. And that would actually be the smart route to go as far as I'm concerned. But I'm sure the guys in the field are are already 3 or 4 chess moves ahead of me with a lot of this stuff. I'm just an armchair analyst.
Yeah, my
Um,
takeaway is that Russians are Philistines.
yeah. So, Alex, you had something else?
No, nothing in particular. I mean,
Yeah, I
yeah,
just
like it's
just saw
just
your
like,
hand was still up.
oh no, I was, oh, is it? Oh, stop sharing is up on my thing. But no, like it's like, I mean, there is surveillance everywhere on the battlefield at the moment. It's like information I'm sharing now is like well over a year old, so there's nothing, that's
Yeah.
I think it's fine now. But like, like I've been with ISR pilots who said like we can see basically everything. We know everything that's happening within 50 kilometers of the front. We could fly further, but we don't bother because even if we could find targets, we don't have fires to effect on them. So that's the reason we don't go deeper. But as their strike drones get deeper, their ISR pilots will go deeper. But they just, if people think, oh, the limitation of how far Ukraine can see is this, it's like, yeah, no, that's not the limitation. They just don't bother going any further because they don't have any way to have an effect if they see something. But yeah, they see much deeper than that. They just don't. They're just at that time they were just like, we just don't have enough stuff to go and hit those things. But obviously we're seeing Ukraine getting pretty good at hitting deeper. So now that they have stuff which can go deep, it's like great. And I'm sure they're doing new tactics and learning new stuff, which is like I got told that like a year and a half ago. So like, yeah, it's nothing new. But like, yeah, there's like there's like the eye of Sauron on the Russian side, but also the Ukrainians have they have good eyes as well. And also thanks to the Japanese and the Finns, I think means that the Japanese have their weird laws about not doing weapons and stuff, but they're smart and they have capabilities. So like they have they basically have like the most advanced like spy satellite out there, like with these new advanced cutting edge super sci-fi synthetic aperture radar satellites. And they're like, well, this is not technically a weapon. So Ukraine, it's yours. We're going to lend it to you for the duration of the war.
Yep.
It's like, oh yeah, that's not a weapon. That's not lethal. It's like really stretching the definitions here, but much appreciated, Japan. Great.
Yeah, it's not a stretch. It's all how you frame it, my friend. And certainly, and it's certainly in keeping with a lot of Japanese culture and history. Just simply, interpreting the letter of the rules rather than necessarily the spirit. But a lot of people do that. But that said, let's move on to Konstantinivka.
Yeah, because there are really two different wars here going on. What the areas you just talked about, Seversk and toward Dobropilya, these are these assaults that you were taught. These armored assaults or infantry infiltration across open ground to cover type assaults. Whereas the battle in Konstantinivka is infiltration into the city, and the character of that is quite a bit different. Obviously, no armored assault assistance, but it obviously continues, and it's very muddy and very difficult to see. To say who holds what in any position inside Konstantinivka because of the way people report things and what people's real purpose of doing it. Right. So the key here is, and you know this from seeing things on that we follow through the OSINT accounts and Tendar and Special Cursing Cat, the people put together packages on military strikes. That Ukraine mostly publishes on Telegram strike photos. These a lot more strike photos. Russians don't publish nearly as much strike photos. The Russians publish a lot of flag videos of where people are at and where they've got to, and especially this time of the month because end of the month is coming up. Bonuses are going to get paid to commanders at the beginning of the month. I shit you not, folks. I'm making this up. The bonuses will come through based on the end of the month figures and so they put up a lot of these sneak a guy in there, put a flag up, prove that we hold that area so I can report it up the line as taking it. So if you look at videos, what's being published, the asymmetry here, there's 140 in Clement Milan's evaluation of this. There were 146 places where Russia had put up are present against 94 by Ukraine. Because does that mean Russia's doing a lot more? Not really, because Russia is focusing on putting flag videos up, whereas where Ukrainians are present, where their photos of people are present, they're not putting up flags where they're really there. They're just it's combat, OSINT combat sort of stuff.
They're killing Russians, is what they're
Well, they
doing.
are doing that, and they mostly publish, strike photos, like you say, so you can tell where guys are at. So that's the thing. So there's if you look at the map of Kostiantynivka, there are scattered positions across the entire area where Russia says it holds it all, and this is how they report it all up, and this is why for more than a month now, Putin has said they already hold Konstantinivka. And the reality is that, and I like the way that Clement Milan goes through this, uh, that Ukraine is present in 70% of the city, and Russia is present in 90% of the city. Much of those percentages obviously overlap, and Ukraine continues to hold the more valuable ground inside the city, buildings where you can turn it into a 3D battle instead of a 2D battle, and Russia continues to infiltrate these guys in ones and twos to go hide in a basement for 3 weeks, and sneak out and put a flag up and take a photo of it, and then go back in the basement and just hide out that way. So to be potentially hunted down by patrols or patrolling drones by Ukraine, and then periodically try to move again. And then when there is contact, they do some firing. But it's not a lot of firing inside here like it is in the other type of attacks that
They're
that you were describing.
they're rats in the wall, is really the way that I describe it.
Right. And that 70-90 that he breaks down,
Yeah.
it ends up being nobody's encircled, that nobody's, neither side is in a position of being cut off by the other side inside the city. Ukraine probably holds slightly better ground inside the city.
hmm
And when they do have battles and kill Russians in there, it's usually catching them out in the open when they're on the way to one of these
Yeah.
flag raising exercises they do.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of what's happening with the Ukrainians in the city is that what they're doing is they're actually identifying targets for the drone units. So
Correct, and the fabs, because
yeah,
that Russia reduces, and this is why he also says this city's lost. This is true, right? Kostiantynivka is lost at some point. Maybe September, something like that. I think you and I would both shift back our date from what we said before, but I don't know. I think we were something like no sooner than the 1st of September. In fact,
right,
it might easily shift past then at this point. But eventually, this city is lost because eventually all those better positions that Ukraine holds will be bombed into oblivion by Russia.
right, yeah,
And once
yeah,
they're bombed into oblivion and they're just broken down basements, which are like concrete foxholes, then they'll evacuate those because the cover isn't as good as no cover and concealment. So they'll eventually just get out of there and
yeah,
let Russia body wave into that thing. But so yeah, Kostiantynivka, it will be lost, but when it will be lost is what's important, and what's Russia going to pay to get it?
yeah. We're looking at a story of we're looking at a story that is it's equations of time, distance, and supply. That's really the nature of the story that we're looking at here. Is that there are calculations that are happening, and those calculations are absolutely in favor of the Ukrainians right now. And let me explain. We're looking at a situation, and let's go back to thinking about the logistics interdiction. Is that Russia has been starting to be seriously affected by that, and most of the effect actually currently is still Crimea, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. So that the impact of what's going on The lack of fuel, the lack of supply, everything else like that really hasn't started to percolate as seriously into other portions of the front. That whole section I was talking about from Pokrovsk up to Sloviansk. It hasn't really fully reached the level of impact that it will. And so that we have a race against time going on here, in part, particularly for the Russians, because they're trying desperately to try to do something where they can just simply by sheer weight of numbers overwhelm the Ukrainian presence inside of Konstantinivka. But they are being attrited tremendously right now with what's going on there, and they are increasingly having difficulties getting supply to the troops that they actually currently have inside of Konstantinivka. They're going to start seeing greater and greater difficulty to actually get supplies into those locations. And then you have this as we're moving along here. You have you're going to see a decreasing capability of the Russians to actually push the Ukrainians around, and you're going to be seeing an increasing capability of the Ukrainians to be able to interdict the Russians being able to supply the troops that they have in the field, and eventually, later on in the fall and early winter, we will see things happen where the Russians will have decreasing capability to actually deliver the kind of close air support that they currently are, to drop these large weapons into places, onto these hard points, Ukrainian hard points that they've been holding inside of places like the city here. We're going to see it's going to become increasingly difficult for the Russians to be able to carry out those missions.
And I'll give you one more statistic that you can take along with what Smokey's just talked about in relation to supply and ability to deliver close air support bombs. Is that for comparison, when Russia was taking Toretsk, just 15 kilometers southeast of Kostiantynivka, when they were at this point in Toretsk, a similar size town, but not, a little smaller. But at this point, before Russia had reduced all the good high buildings and to the ground, and so when the state of Toretsk was about what the state of Kostiantynivka is now, it took Russia 8 more months to clear out and take all of Kostiantynivka. Or sorry, Toretsk. So with less supply and if possible less bombing available to Russia, you would think it would be slower, wouldn't you?
To wit, I think there is a significant chance that Russia will run out of capability to take this city before they can actually do it. I will say this at the very least. I'm going to predict that come October 15th, Ukraine is going to still be in Konstantinivka. That's a prediction I'll make right now.
I'll join you. I'll join you on that. In fact, I'm going to say Halloween.
Okay, so, fair enough. But I would say that it is within the realm of possibility that that Ukraine may actually start taking back positions inside of the city by the time we get to the beginning of the new year. So that I'm thinking that that we're going to see. I think we'll see a high watermark sometime early to mid fall. But I think at some point, within this year, or by the end of the year, we may actually see the Ukrainians starting to push the Russians back out of Konstantinivka.
And
I think that's within the realm of possibility.
I agree, and with the except for some stuff about manpower, I'll talk to you about later. But with if you take all that evaluation, in addition to what Magyar was talking about, and then Magyar was basically saying the number of attacks up and down the line are going down. they're increasing their attack size a little bit here. They're 18% in the size. The numbers of the people that are going on these attacks inside this line between Pokrovsk and Seversk, and the kill rate is going up, commensurate with the number of bodies that show up. How good do you think this is going to go for Russia if they do a mobilization and simply feed more meat into this grinder? You know, they're counting on Ukraine literally running out of drones, and we know that they can field 10,000 a day now.
Yeah. No, it won't. They won't be able to make it. And here's another thing. So it is possible, especially with what we're seeing here in Konstantinivka and possibly in some, depending on the ground up near Sloviansk and Pokrovsk and elsewhere. It may profit Ukraine to just simply to let the Russians push them out of these places slowly, to do what amounts to a phased withdrawal in a fighting retreat and out of these places as they have been, and not necessarily commit the forces to try to push the Russians back.
Yeah, because to hold Konstantinivka, it is of difficult value unless you hold the high ground to the northeast Chasiv Yar and the area near Druzhkivka, neither of which Russia will hold.
Well, yeah, the thing is that I don't think the Russians are going to push the Ukrainians out of Chasiv Yar. So but that nevertheless,
not if our friends in the 18th have anything to say about it.
Right. The thing is that it is within the realm possibility that Ukraine could just simply walk away from Konstantinivka. Just simply say, okay, we've done enough here, and withdraw back to the fortress belt that they've got that is immediately behind the city. They've got extensive and very powerful fortifications behind the city, and there will be a buffer of open ground that Russia will have to cross to get to their next milestone. And they will be doing that with less supply, less resources, less trained troops. They may have more troops, but they won't be as well trained. It will turn into just a fantastic killing ground.
Yeah, and the only reason I think the only reason to keep holding in Konstantinivka as long as they decide that it's valuable to them is because, like with Bakhmut, which remind you is still only 30 kilometers to the northeast. We're not talking about big distances here. Russia's just going to move on to the next place and level it to the ground, and that's what they did with Bakhmut. They do everywhere. They only know one way to do this, and they're leveling to the ground everything in front of them that they say they want to take as an objective, which is, I think it defines Pyrrhic victory.
Well, their capability of doing that is declining as well. Let's and actually, while we're here, okay, here's where we talk about another thing, and I think I dropped the link into the back channel. One of the things that's happening right now, and this is potentially significant, not immediately, but later on, is Ukraine is currently not just developing, but deploying anti-drone laser systems.
Yeah, we talked about this a couple of days ago. Carry on.
Yeah, so and well, there's some. I'm seeing some stuff with some discussions with some teeth in it. So they've already got a system which has already been used to shoot down FPV drones, and it's now being deployed and it's now being set up so that they can apply it and actually use it against shaheeds. So the FPVs, the benefit there is obvious, but the thing is that the Russians have increasingly been using shaheeds in a tactical role. You've got 100 kilogram warhead. So if you can fly this thing, and you've got really very good accuracy with it, tactically, which is really good. And 100 kilogram bang is, a significant bang, goddammit, if you can get it close enough to a position or a vehicle or whatever. So if you now have a laser system, which is something that I will add, which is something that Russia is not got the capability to develop and deploy quickly. So this is something that's evolving on the Ukrainian side, which Russia is significantly constrained in coming up with the equivalent technology. They might be able to do some things, that they could use around some of their large metro areas, but they're not going to be able to create systems like the Ukrainians are right now, which potentially are mobile. And, so.
And I'll note that almost exactly 1 year ago today, well, the 5th of August, the EOS, which is the company we've had
Uh-huh.
on here a couple of years ago,
Uh-huh.
that produces the Slinger system. They were also working on a 100 kilowatt high power laser weapon system
Uh-huh.
targeted with their same system, and they sold one of those to, and I quote, a European customer on the 5th of August 2025. They announced that. Now, I would when
What do
they
you
said that
know?
and they just said to a European customer, I went, mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no question in my mind that it was the Ukrainians, and no question in my mind that they've
Because
probably been working with them, with EOS, to come up with new kit and new control systems specifically to start dealing with drones.
yeah, because when they sold them through a European or through an American customer that purchased them and gave them to Ukraine 2.5 years ago, and we had them on, we're talking to them about that. Then, I'm sure they were in Ukraine. They said, "Man, we really like those slingers," and they said to him, "Well, you should see the laser one we do." And so they literally sent Vasyl Miroshnichenko, the ambassador to Australia, along to a demo. They had it on the ABC News, and then 6 months later, there's this announced sale to a quote unquote. Now,
Mm-hmm.
100 kilowatt laser would be absolute overkill on an FPV drone, but the same laser could kill a Shahed, and it could kill a cruise missile if you could target it with it. I mean,
Yeah.
100 kilowatt
Well,
laser is a massively powerful thing, and they said it can do it for $4 a shot.
right. Yeah, that's the thing. It is that you're talking about all you're paying for is electricity, and the main thing that you need to do is just simply have the necessary uh, hardware and control software to be able to keep that laser focused and on target at the right range, and over time.
And the
So
battery is good enough, they say, that they were able to shoot down 20 drones in 60 seconds.
right, yeah. So you've got so here's and this is I think I may have tossed something in the back channel about this. This is what I'm imagining. I'm imagining at some point within in the next 6 months, that you're actually going to have autonomous UGVs with anti-drone lasers attached to them that are going to be embedded organically in Ukrainian units that will permit them to be able to advance unimpeded against Russian drone forces.
Yeah, they're spendy though. These
That's
systems. Force protection is going to be a big deal with these things though, because if in
well,
fact it is
well,
this EOS one, they're 71 million euros a pop. But that's the capital
well,
cost. The operating cost isn't that much.
well, and well. Here's the thing: is that I've also been hearing about, uh, you know, stuff anecdotally. I have to dig up some of the links. I have been looking at and hearing about stuff that the Ukrainians apparently are doing with basic industrial lasers and targeting systems. With these are industrial lasers that are like 30 kilowatts or less, which is more than sufficient for an FPV.
Yeah. The only
And
disappointing thing about
you
this is going to be fantastic, but the only disappointing thing is real lasers you won't be able to see the laser beam because, of course, they're invisible
No.
unless there's dust or whatever. But it is going to be unbelievably cool to just see a hole appear through a Shahed drone and then it explodes shortly after.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there won't be the spectacular stuff like a trail of tracers. Unless it's foggy, that might happen. But um, the thing is that this stuff. The main thing, the upshot is that this stuff is coming, and it is going to be tech which, to the best of my understanding and my expectation, is not something that Russia is going to be able to replicate as quickly.
Not a chance,
It-
and not unless they steal it.
yeah. Well, even if they steal it, they can steal it, but they still are not going to be able to replicate it at scale that will be required for them to be able to do the same thing the Ukrainians are going to be able to do with it. And the thing is about this is that if you have the ability, combined with the other organic anti-drone stuff that is being added to vehicles, you are going to find that suddenly that maneuver warfare may be back on the table.
Yeah, maybe that's true, or it's certainly facilitated. Another.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think this is a really good demonstration, the laser. Neither Ukraine or Russia have the ability to really do the optics and all the other stuff involved to do a complete deployable system, but Ukraine's allies do. So something you've probably seen if you've watched me on Silicon Curtain or Starsky or Polish TV is I'm always advocating for a better use of the industrial and academic research bases outside of Ukraine.
Oh yeah, Japan, Korea, Australia would be fantastic.
Exactly. And if we can get those guys in and doing stuff at a larger scale, then yes, it will take time, but the technological advantage that Ukraine would get essentially procured through that is just going to be overwhelming. Yeah, sure, China's going to do stuff.
And the benefit we would derive here and South Korea and Japan, if we got into this, we derive a lot of defense benefit from it because we would then have the exact same tools in our kit bag to counter China and North Korea.
Exactly. And the second time I came to Ukraine, I was to present my findings on essentially thermomechanical analysis of Shaheds to their MOD. And they asked me about how would you evaluate laser resistance of drones, materials for drones. I do not know. But I went home and I thought about it. So if there becomes a case that hypothetically Russia did have a battlefield laser, there's a material you can make your drones with, which will then render your laser pretty useless. I know, not giving anything away because I invented it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there is a solution to the problem should it arise, but I do not think it will.
There's lots of physics involved, and I absolutely can imagine
make drones out of mirror
the kind of Well, I can absolutely imagine the physics and tech that you are applying, Alex. So I'm pretty sure I'm not going
to go into it.
No.
There is something there.
Yeah, there's absolutely something there. There's ways to do it. Now, for me, thinking about it, here's one of the problems for the Russians is that in some ways, stealth technology is actually a disadvantage in trying to defeat lasers, because the stuff that makes it possible for you to hide from radar and to hide from visual spotting is exactly the sort of stuff that is going to basically mean that it will absolutely suck up every last erg of energy from a laser that actually targets it. So that
Yeah, I would say that those what do they call the materials? RAMs, radar absorbent materials. Russia says they know how to do stealth. I'm not convinced they do.
Well,
let them play at it if they want. But yeah, but once again, in terms of how do you detect stealth? There was a guy from UCD in what was it, Trinity? I can't remember. One of the top Irish universities. He published some papers on basically how to detect stealth, and I think he probably got a visit from the Americans. But
yep.
This is the thing: is the academic expertise if it's brought to bear, gives Ukraine such an advantage.
Yeah.
And then, you remember the principal? I said I met principal from Brave One.
Mhm.
Yeah, he is a named person, and his sole responsibility is to bring in collaboration with the international research base, industrial and academic.
Yeah.
So I think Ukraine have had some examples where gone, holy shit, that was quite useful. Maybe we should have more of that. And the EU's gone, cool, here's 300 million to go do it. So yeah, it's a real thing. Maybe I wasn't entirely screaming into the void in all those YouTube channels.
No! I mean,
yeah, it seems to be happening.
I have been screaming about, as have our folks who live in Japan been screaming about how Australia, South Korea, and Japan should literally be the arsenal of democracy in this war for Ukraine, the way America was for Europe during the Second World War, because if you're manufacturing things, the real industrial base and high tech development base is here in Japan, South Korea, and Australia. This laser weapon system that was developed in Australia was being fabricated in Singapore and then sent to the quote unquote European customer. That you can do the same thing in Japan, because they're the folks that produce the really good synthetic aperture radar. They have a very good high tech equipment development system over there, and South Korea and Japan both have incredibly good industrial manufacturing bases for everything from boats to things that can be converted into weapons and everything. And chemicals, and some of the chemical manufacture that ought to be being done in South Korea and Japan and handed over. There's no reason to be short of RTX or any of the explosives or propellants, because those ought to be all pumped up by South Korea and Japan and fed into the system over in Ukraine as quick as they can make it, I would think. But
yeah. And I will say, and I see Alex has his hand up, so I'll land after this, let him talk. But people often want to go, how is it that Russia don't have any Baba Yagas like the vampire? Well, if you look at the flight controller on the Ukrainian Baba Yagas, you'll normally see an orange cube. That's a Cube Pilot. It's made by an Australian company. And I know the CEO, it's like they don't just not actively try, they don't just, not. Let's say they do a lot more than the minimum to ensure that their systems do not end up.
Yeah, good know your customers.
So exactly. So when they know their customers, like they have no problem with Ukrainians getting their hands on them. They do have a problem with Russians getting a hand on them, and they take active measures to try and make sure that it stays that way. So yeah, good Australian company there, and they also shut down all of their factories in China and French onshored them or French-shored them. So yeah, good on Cube.
That's a good word.
Yeah,
French-shored them. Alex,
wondering feller than Monica.
I was just going to challenge that $4 estimate on the lasers, maybe $4 of electricity. But every time you fire that thing, you're signing up for hundreds, if not thousands of dollars of deferred maintenance on the expendable components on that as well. High-powered lasers have a habit of burning themselves out after too long.
Right, and especially if you're shooting 60 or 20 shots in 60 seconds, you'd think a burst laser like that it would cost more. Yeah, that must be the electricity cost to produce it for $4.
Yeah,
but
you'll end up with like, you might get 100,000 shots out of one of them. That could be extremely effective, but then you're still needing several $1 million of new systems.
Yeah, right. Fair enough. Certainly less than a $10,000 drone, though. Monica.
Greetings from Seoul, South Korea. I heard you mention this country. I freaking love this place. And
me too.
they are good at making fucking everything. I'll tell you right now, I got a 55-inch. I probably will. I've been watching it on TV. Baseball and soccer. They play soccer in the summer here because the same in the United States. It's kind of cold in the winter here. But they make everything great. In my home, I've got a big-ass Samsung TV with a million advanced features. I have a Samsung phone I just bought. I have a Samsung refrigerator with a fucking computer in it. I can surf the web on my refrigerator. How cool is that? Not that I've ever have any reason to do it.
And best high-speed Wi-Fi for everybody in the whole country, of any country in the world. Did you move to Korea? Good on you.
No, this is I'm in Asia for about a month with my daughter. This is my second visit to Korea. The first time I was here was in 2002. And I was blown away by the tech. They were already using teeny little smartphones. And I had some big, clunky, dumbass phone that I brought from the States. And since then, they continue to be ahead of the world when it comes to Wi-Fi and electronics. My only gripe with South Korea is I wish they sent more military kit directly to Ukraine. And if you want me to knock on any doors while I'm here the next 2 weeks, you let me know. I'll go knock on their doors and scream at them. I even know a little Korean.
Hey,
And then I'm going
honestly,
to.
if you were to run across, and this is humanitarian, the Unbroken, the rehab center in Lviv, needs to help. If you find a polyurethane manufacturer that makes polyurethane in bulk and could ship it to Ukraine cheaply, that would help them out in manufacturing prosthetics.
Well, I'll think about that. And then on August 10th, I'm flying to Tokyo and spending a little less than 2 weeks there.
Nice.
So, hanging out with my daughter, but still listening to you guys all the time. A little disorienting to hear your voice in the afternoon. I'm almost on your time, Will. I'm used to listening to you in the middle of the night.
Nice. Well, that's good. Yeah, welcome to Asia. Again, back to Asia. I hope you have a great trip. South Korea is fantastic, but I've only been to Japan one time, and I spent the entire time basically in a design office and didn't really get to go much of any place. So I'd like to get back to Japan too.
Well, one of my main objectives here is to let my daughter have a good time without her maxing out all my credit cards.
Wow, good luck with that, with all the nice stuff to buy. It's a shopper's paradise, that's for sure. So, Smokey, go on.
I was going to say, Monica, enjoy your trip, and I hope you're able to stir up some polyurethane for the Ukrainians along the way. But first off, and most important, enjoy yourself and your time.
Thank you so much, guys.
You're welcome, and good to hear from you. So here we are. Now we're actually moving into some other stuff here. Let's talk about Ukrainian strikes on Russia. One of the things that caught my attention, then there's a certain amount of international kerfluffle, is the Ukrainians have hit some more kit in the Caspian Sea. So one of the things that they got is they apparently tagged another Volya class missile boat, and they apparently hit 2 sanctioned cargo vessels.
Yeah, so explain this to me. On the tiny little Caspian Sea, they're escorting their military equipment carrying cargo vessels with military vessels over there, yet they run unprotected convoys attempt to run unprotected convoys through the Sea of Azov. Make that make sense to me, Smokey.
Scale. Yeah, is that just simply the sheer number of drones and ordnance that Ukraine can, precision ordnance that Ukraine can put into the air over the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea approaches to Kerch, is just so overwhelming that the potential survival time of any kind of Russian escort vessel is probably measured in hours, if not minutes.
Yeah, and they'd hunt any escorts as a priority for sure.
Yeah, so you're looking at, the Ukrainians probably have got the capability. Well, actually, there really isn't any question in my mind that the Ukrainians do have the capability to put Hornet equivalents over the Sea of Azov, and while they aren't big, 5 kilos of C4 equivalent on the bridge of an escort or on a weapon mount, or take your pick, you're quite likely to end up with a mission kill. At the very least, you may potentially, if you can create a cascade, you may kill the boat especially the small ones, and we haven't even started talking about the larger drones, which these escorts they're World War II destroyer sized, but they are not necessarily built as robustly as those vessels were. Um, and they're generally made with lighter materials and potentially in materials that can be set on fire. So a significant, and we've seen these things get hit with drones and with naval drones and take your pick and just get pulled apart by them. So we know that it doesn't necessarily take that significant a whack to disable it. So so what do we see? We see the remains of the Russian fleet crouched down behind barricades and large numbers of air defense systems in Novorossiysk Harbor, hoping that they're going to be able to fend off any kinds of attacks that happen.
And
Meanwhile, in the Caspian, they think they've got a chance of potentially intercepting any incoming ordnance.
yeah, and this attack in the Caspian Sea on the military vessel and then the military cargo carrying vessel, Ukraine has been telling America and others that Russia is assisting Ukraine. Russia is assisting Iran with weapons deliveries and with intelligence. And essentially, they just said they're helping you with those. They said, well, like where? Like in Boom, this ship right here. And when they struck that ship five times, look at the reaction from Iran, right? Saying we can reach you with ballistic missiles. So they're essentially telling the Americans something and then demonstrating it through reflexive reaction by Iran that they're not lying in their intelligence. That vessel was carrying militarily important cargo from Russia to Iran that was important enough that when Ukraine struck it, Iran threatened them. Pretty good confirmation.
Exactly. The classic physical intelligence. You hit your target when it blows up. And that can be metaphorical as well. And in this case, it's what blew up was the Iranians reacting to this, saying, "You do that, and we are going to hurt you." So okay, bring it. I can just that would be such a bad idea for the RGC. I cannot begin to tell you just how bad an idea that would be for the RGC.
Yeah, I
on
think
so
they've
many
got their
multiple
plate
levels.
full. Right, they're doing pretty well against the Americans,
Yep.
but I think their plate's full.
Well, there's also all sorts of other dynamics. The IRGC launching ballistic missiles at Ukraine is a completely different level of escalation.
I mean,
And
everybody in Poland and all the rest of the NATO countries would have to be concerned because they'd also be pointed essentially at them.
Well, here's the thing: is that it's a new opponent and a different kind of opponent, and one who is known to be a radical, bad, a bad seed, a bad faith player on the world stage, who is now also attacking Ukraine, and I see that potentially as loosening basically unleashing a whole bunch of potential responses on the part of countries that are currently supporting Ukraine in ways that Russia would find unpleasant, and also indirectly Iran would find unpleasant. So there would be potential difficulties for Ukraine if the Iranians start tossing ballistic missiles at Ukraine. I'm kind of wondering just exactly how this would play out. Because I don't know about the relative accuracy of some of the and it would be longer range Iranian munitions that would have to be used.
No doubt.
So I'm not sure how that would necessarily play out.
But I think it'd be horrible, right? No one would be able to say this is not a world war. I tell you, it's a world war right now because of
Yeah.
North Korea's involvement.
Yeah.
It's technically a world war right now. But if Iran started lobbing shit at Ukraine rather than sending stuff to Russia to lob at them, it's on like Donkey Kong. It's a full on real world war, and you'd see a lot of Ukraine's allies get involved to help them crush Russia, because the Russia-Iran axis would literally be at war with goodness and light.
It completely changes the geopolitical calculation, without question. So I think we've got
Jenny,
who
and
was
then
first?
Alex.
Was it Alex? Jenny, then Alex. Jenny, go ahead.
You asked what they were thinking. Well, the answer is priorities. They do not prioritize the civilians and the people living in Crimea. They don't care about them. So therefore, they're not valuable enough to whatever supplies that they're sending their way is not worthy of being protected, because they are not of any priority whatsoever. However, getting military gear from Iran, which will then be sent to the soldiers on the front line in Ukraine so that they can kill more Ukrainians. Now that is that is the way they're thinking. Is it fucked up? Yes, it absolutely is. But it's also Russia, which is a country that is FUBAR. And that is why we say fuck Russia. Thank you.
No, thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Jenny. Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say it's something interesting to reflect on in the Iran situation is so if Iran becomes free, which I desperately hope for its people it does, the logical leader until there is a for the transition will be the Shah in exile, Reza Pahlavi, who I actually got to meet in Odessa, which I think is interesting. So, who is the only European head of state who has chosen to sit down with him? Zelenskyy, and has done so multiple times. And also, in terms of foreign countries that the Shah's going to visit, he gave the closing address at the Black Sea Security Forum. So whatever is happening, I think obviously Ukraine are aware of potential threat of Iran and how to manage it. But it's pretty clear what they want to see is they realize they realize they're at war with not just Russia, but Russia, North Korea, China, and the Islamic regime. Once again, the second time I was here was to help them figure out the supply chains and how the Iranians were getting the material to make those bloody sheds. But yeah, I think it's telling that Zelenskyy is the only European head of state who's taken the opportunity to meet Reza Pahlavi multiple times, and that the Shah chose to come to Ukraine. Obviously, an active war zone. Odessa gets hit the whole time, but there were air raids whilst he was there. But he chose to come and came around afterwards, was shaking hands with people like me and being like, we the Iranian people are not the same as the Islamic regime. The Iranian people who support me will also want to see you win. I want to see you be peaceful and free, just like we want for our own people.
But yeah, no doubt. Smokey, I see we're almost out of time, but we'll go to the next whatever item you want next.
Well, where was I going next?
We were doing some booms inside Russia, but we can let Mockers cover those. I'll note that the attacks in Crimea apparently on the Tavriskaya power plant again, which is yummy.
Well, it's. I think what I was kind of wrapping up with was just simply talking about the Ukrainian interdiction of transport across the Caspian, and this is actually a surprisingly important thing. You still hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I had something go sideways with my headset for a second. The key thing with that is that if Ukraine has the ability to extend their logistics interdiction to the Caspian, this affects their ability to move oil around. It affects their ability to move any kind of military and components in either direction. In ways that are going to be going to create problems for both the Russians and the Iranians. And I think this is part of why the Iranians reacted so sharply with this, is that they recognize the vulnerability. is that one of the ways in which they are able to sustain their campaign against the United States and the other countries in the Gulf is exactly that pipeline that they have with Russia. And so, if the Ukrainians can interfere with that, that will materially undermine the Iranians' ability. At least, excuse me, the IRGC's ability to continue the fight that it is carrying out against, basically against the West in its entirety. So the degree to which Ukraine can actually continue that and create confusion and frustration for both the Russians and the Iranians is going to be a good thing. So I see two hands. I saw Lexicon first and then another. Though actually, let's hang on. Let's pause here for a second because we are at 11:57 p.m. Will, um, and I think it might be time for us to basically, wish our audience well. And actually, for me, I'm going to say to you, thank you once again for putting up with my lateness and having me co-host with you tonight. It was, as always, a pleasure, and I'm glad to be able to hold forth in ways that I think and I'm hopeful is useful for the Ukrainians and to help them with the struggle moving forward. So in the event that I don't get to pop up and say things again, I'm going to say Slava Ukraini and look forward to talking with you next Thursday if I don't get a chance between now and then.
Heron Slava.
So Heron Slava. But until then, go ahead. Lexicon, I think you're next, and then back to Alex.
Well, you want to do your changeover? It's fine. It's not.
Yeah, he's going. That's why he's doing. That's why he said go to you.
Mm. Well, I was just going to say a word about the demonstrations that they seem to be in a large number of cities. That the Bring Back Fedorov movement. They're larger. The size is not decreasing. They go on into the night. You see some pictures with lights and stuff, starting earlier, going later, which is odd. Well, maybe not during the week, but yeah, very lively, very kind of festive atmosphere, but really clear demands and very pointed at the Rada to come back and do your job. And I'm amazed by how feminine a movement it is. Like I only sort of realized yesterday how preponderant the numbers of women are, which probably makes sense. There's a lot of men who aren't there. But then another thing, 2 points that an awful lot of the analysts, commentators that we're familiar with are speaking up in favor of Fedorov, what he contributed and what he is still needed for. And even some people like outsiders like John Foreman, a very sort of sober, reflective guy, seems to be carrying the message. I heard from him, I hadn't realized that Fedorov was important in the wish to move to the core system. I've heard people like David D deny that, but in fact, it was more not that he's in that role, but nonetheless that he was a proponent of it. And then just to say that friends of mine who are not in a position to go demonstrating, but they're supporting. So everybody that I know, and then the people they know informing them are supporting this movement. So a demonstration is always a bit of a tip of the iceberg. So I don't know. I have no idea how this can go, but pretty interesting to watch those developments.
No doubt. Hello, mockers. Hello, Chief, the new chair of VolyaRadio, I might say. Congratulations, young lady. And I will also say there's a absolute shit ton of stuff in the nest that we didn't get to, but you certainly can pick and browse amongst it as you wish. Thanks, Smokey. 2 hours burned by. Thanks, Alex. And thanks, Monica and Lexi and everybody else who had a chat with us. See you later, mockers.
Bye then. Bye then. Nother, did you have something else that you wanted to add before I go ahead?
I'm not sure why my hand is showing us up. Like I've had this multiple times, but it's not. But I will say, following on from Lexicon, it's like, why don't we go grab a coffee sometime? But also, like randomly, I bumped into a mate guy called Roman Trochimets. Maybe some of you guys have heard of him. So he's
yes.
a ex sniper. Yeah, so he was on the way to the rally as well. So there you go, and a former sniper in Azov. So it's pretty clear who he's supporting. Might actually be an interesting guy to talk to sometime as a guest on the radio if he's up for it. If you're interested, I'll ask him when I next see him because he's just like, yeah, let's go for a beer, etc. But yeah, I might drop down. I've got some stuff to do. I don't know why my hand is showing up, but it's not showing up for me. But also, Mockers, I haven't read that because I know I would not be able to keep my stuff together. So feel free when you're ready.
Yeah,
And,
I'm
yeah.
actually going to save it for the last thing I do on today's radio. I've got something to read out for you folks, a little tribute, and I'm not going to be able to keep it together either. So it's going to be the last thing I do so that I can go and have a little sob afterwards. Roman, would you believe we once did have him to interview on MR, and let's just say that the person asking him questions just was not in the right frame of mind to ask him decent questions, if you know what I mean. And it was the most awkward interview I've ever heard in my life. So let's maybe have him on and ask him nicer things. That would be lovely. Thank you. So I'm going to get my friend Tanker Watcher up now because we're going to have a little rant about the Irish government and their investigation into Orhanish Alumina, because guess what? It's packed full of lies. And there's all sorts of lies that we noticed. But don't worry, Orhanish Alumina have made a statement that they're going to redouble their efforts to ensure that none of their alumina makes it into weapons. So that's okay then. We're just going to take their word for it, yeah, because Russians always tell the truth, don't they? Don't they, Firefella? Do Russians what? Just say, actually, no, they don't. That's what I was looking for there. Anyway, Tanker Watcher, in fact. Morning.
Morning. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
You're a wee bit quiet, but I think that's me.
Little bit quiet. No, I'm using my mic this morning. 2 seconds. How's that?
Shrug.
Okay.
Carry on.
I'll try and speak up. I'm a bit croaky this morning. Yes. So there's a lot going on. Where to start? So, like you said, yeah, packed full of lies. So I think really the big lie is their reluctance to release it to the public in the first place. They said that it had contained commercially sensitive material, and that was the reason why they couldn't release it.
Yeah, can I just comment on that?
Go.
Because a secret is only a secret until you tell one other person, isn't it? And then, obviously, somebody is going to leak that because, I mean, it's such a big issue at the moment that you can't possibly keep that quiet. So I thought that was pretty silly of them in the first place to try and keep it under, let's just all keep it under our hat. Actually, no, because investigative journalists exist. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like they said as well, like they said the data from the Ockers itself was commercially sensitive, and yet in the report itself, it stated that there was nothing commercially sensitive. The other issue, the biggest lie, was the interaction with Sweden, because as we all know, the aluminium refinery, so the refinery that takes the alumina from Ockers and brings it to Sweden, also owned by Rusal, that's currently under investigation. And they said, more or less, they were trying to hint that, we can't speak about that because it's under investigation and that's potential evidence. Well, it turns out Sweden has a law where it's not allowed to disclose it. And the only thing they did disclose to the Irish government was a document that was already publicly available. So, yeah, I think a few of us are a little bit angry this morning. like that from yesterday, a couple of more articles went out from Conor Gallagher from the Irish Times. I find it ironic that this all kicked off because Conor was able to get hold of leaked data from deep inside Russia from Rusal, and we've come full circle now to him getting this report, which was based on his findings, which he got by it being leaked, which I thought was a bit ironic. So the other, yes. So it has this report has raised way more questions than it has actually answered, because it turns out there is this whole network of suppliers and companies with very similar names, all based in different countries. I think there's one based in Cyprus. There's one based in, is it Qatar? I'll try my best to find it. It's hard when you have to go through three different articles. But possibly. I like that. It said in the actual report itself, and this is probably the bit they didn't want us to know. There's a possibility of circumvention by the parent company. So you've all these like Rusal.
Oh, I'm shocked. Sorry. Shocking.
Shocked. Not that shocked. So yeah, just trying to find this now. But like there was this whole network of like Rusal companies based in different countries that was found during this investigation. And then they've, instead of like poking a bit further, they just go, "Ooh, there's a bit of a risk here. Okay, what are we going to do about it? Are you going to look into it further?" And I don't know about you, but we've been waiting, 4 months now? 4 months, I think. 100 and something, 120 days, I think it was. And they've only managed to produce about 50 pages. I mean, unless it was written in font 8 or something, seems a bit light. What do you think, Mockers? You're good. You're quite good with admin.
I could have written that report in my sleep. Less than 100 days ago. Let's just put it that way. All of that was very weak, milk toast attempt at some kind of investigation. Look, we've done an investigation. Look at us.
We found no wrongdoing on our side.
Yes. You see, what we have found out looking into it is that a number of members of the current government, including the PM himself, were involved in keeping Orhanish out of sanctions.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm just going to say that there's possible wrongdoing there. Now, I'm just saying that the more that they try and squish this information, the more they try and sort of sidestep it, the more it looks to me like they took money and they don't want anyone to find out.
Well, they're definitely motivated to keep this quiet for their own personal reasons. And there's still a bit of me that thinks that this goes all the way back to the early 2000s, when that other farce of a report was the what's called the Askeaton report, because that's the name. Orhanish was like once an island where the plant is based, and they've basically joined it up with the land, so it's no longer an island. But the actual surrounding area is called Askeaton, because that's where all the health problems were arising from. And so that's why it was called the Askeaton report. And they did all these health issues. And do you know what? This one always mirrors exactly that, in the sense that none of the right questions were asked, or nothing was dug into the way people were kind of hoping for. So in the case back in the early 2000s, it was the farmers were trying to find out the link between their health issues, the animal issues, and industrial pollution from the plant. But of course, they never tested. Their tests never related to industrial pollution, and they just turned around and gaslit them, said, "Oh yeah, your animals died because you're crap farmers." And I'm just getting a whiff of that again. And of course, as we know, the now Taoiseach, the now PM, Irish PM, is he was Minister for Health during that investigation back in the early 2000s. So the whole thing just stinks to high hell now. It just seems to be a repeat. And I said that before earlier. It's like it's going to be a repeat. It's just going to be another farce of a report, which they're going to try and bury. And they tried to bury it, but luckily Connor someone managed to leak it to Connor, which we're really. I will put my hand on heart. I know we we definitely get the government, having a go at the government is justified, but there are a lot of good Irish people out there doing great work. You think of Connor, you think of the guy who's leaked that now, who's probably taking a risk with his career now as well, but he still did it because it was the right thing, the way Dan started all this movement from the beginning, and all the Irish that's followed us along the way. And we have supported Ukraine. Granted, we are neutral and we don't support non-lethal. And I know that's a source that can be a bit of a source of frustration. But at the end of the day, I just hope people don't lose too much sight that the Irish are sick of this as well, and not to think that somehow we all want to suck up for Russia, because we certainly don't. Sorry, bit of a rant.
Well, no, that's not a rant at all. That's just factual information. Go ahead, Firefella.
No, just checking that I'm back. You're absolutely right, Tanker. We do understand that the Irish people are not part of this, but unfortunately, mate, your government is up to its neck in shite, and it will be found out, I suspect, very shortly.
Well, this is the thing. I think they seem to be so caught off guard by just everything that's happened, because Artnish for years has always been left alone. It's always been protected. Like I said yesterday, all the waste was supposed to be shipped abroad, but they turned a blind eye to that. They turned a blind eye to the health issues. They're turning a blind eye to this. And they thought, well, as long as the jobs are there, no one is ever going to touch this. They basically thought this place was untouchable when it comes to scrutiny. But now, of course, it's getting more and more, louder. And another encouraging thing is, like, for the first time ever, because I saw this little report on it. Was just because there's a hose pipe ban in Ireland now, so you can't water your flowers, you can't wash your cars. It's nationwide as well, by the way. And they were going to, because a lot of the tankies, a lot of the socialists, the communists, enthusiasts, if you like, in Ireland, they've been kicking up a huge stink over data centers, which they claim are like using huge amounts of water, which is still disputed, because they're not AI centers. I know that uses a lot of water, but they're trying to make out the data centers use just as much. But someone did a report mentioning all the big companies using water in Ireland, and Ockers got mentioned. And I was like, that's the first time I've ever seen Ockers mentioned in a different context ever in anything like that. Before, it was never spoken about, but now people are starting to realize, oh, it uses 5 billion liters of water a year. So it shows the encouraging that people are actually talking about it, and when it becomes relevant, people are willing to mention it now. So I think we've started something much bigger here than we realized.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Sometimes, you start something, you just start asking questions, and you end up opening this massive can of worms. So look what's happened. That we've opened this massive can of worms, and now they're trying to sort of stuff those worms back in the can, and it's not working. I'll just say this up front: if they had taken some action initially, and perhaps sought to seek other buyers and force, Russia to sell to other buyers, there'd have been none of this, would there?
No, we
But
wouldn't have got to
instead,
take. No, we wouldn't
here
have
we
got.
are.
Well, here we are. And here's another little tidbit. Before I found a bit on the network, but just to add on what you just said there, Mockers. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before, Peter Burke, when he announced his little blurb of a report, he gave a little bit of a blurb, 450 words, I think, of the report, of what he was allowed to say. But his justification, as I said yesterday, for Ocknish shifting its supply to Russia, his main thing was companies that were buying off Ocknish were afraid of the reputational damage. And you're there thinking, well, then what are we doing? You know, if they're not willing to work with a Russian company, you know, what do you think? How is that going to affect Ireland as a whole? If they're not willing to work with this company in Ireland, well, how does that make Ireland look? And now they've just, by trying to fudge it and downplay it and hide it and cover it, they've now just themselves, and again, this is all on them. This is not on the Irish, as we know. This was something completely preventable. Like you said, had they taken action early, you know, had to face, you know, the few people which, you know, faced, we'll say, the risk of job losses, because it's only a hypothetical at this stage. And you know, there's no actual, you know, there's no real reason for everyone to just shut it down tomorrow morning because they decided not to supply to Russia. But, you know, they could work with this. And even like, you know, the PM, when he visited Ukraine, when he visited Zelenskyy, he even made a little comment of saying something, you know, it was something along the lines of, we need to find we should explore other options in stopping the supply to Russia. I mean, Jesus Christ, I'm sorry, I'm not going to swear, but it's like, it's taken 4 months for him to move that little bit, to go from no, jobs, leave him alone, to, oh, we might have to look at we might have to explore options now of stopping this supply. So that's, you know, but in a way, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. We're getting there. We're getting
Well,
there. Slowly, steady. Do you know, I'm actually thinking of Caelan's, you know, when Caelan interviewed Niall Collins. So that was the guy who did the yawn emoji, in case people have forgotten.
yeah, that was the guy who found this all very tiresome, you know,
Indeed,
yawning
yeah.
about it.
Well, there was everyone was like, oh no, we can't get into hypothetics about if it's supplying Russia. But it's like, well, job losses are hypothetical. You're defending, your counter argument is a hypothetical. It's hypothetics, but yet you're saying, oh, this is, you know, if this investigation finds that it's if you when you talk about the potential of the wrongdoing, it's like, to them that's hypothetical, but the risk of job losses because you want to change suppliers is also hypothetical. So it's just the hypocrisy as well is off the charts. So yeah, going back to the supply. So separately, so this is from the Irish Times, by the way. This is just kind of explaining how it kind of worked. Separately, there's a complex array of Cypriot and Middle Eastern companies which do business with Ocknish Numa. This raises concerns about sanctions circumvention by its Russian parent company, the government reports found. So, you know, this is something they reported themselves. Ocknish states it does not have a contract with Rusal Trading House. Rather, the contract is with Rusal Trading International. Before moving to AL Plus Trading in Cyprus, before moving on to another company in Qatar. So, as Firefella puts it, a bit of skullduggery. To further complicate matters, Ocknish has stated that it engages with newly established arms of the Rusal Group, which have minor variations to their name, but are often registered or operate in different jurisdictions.
Now that doesn't sound dodgy at all, does it?
No, perfectly fine. Ocknish's intra-group shared service provider was Libertrem Materials in Cyprus before moving to Libertrem Investments in Qatar. Oh, for heaven's sakes! Yeah, no, that's perfect. No, that sounds perfectly fine. No, there's no way, you know. It's not like you need to buy from a supplier directly to, you know. It's not like an aluminium smelter needs to buy it directly. No. Perfectly reasonable to go through all that skullduggery. Perfectly fine. I'm sure
Well,
it is.
they might as well just name them Dodgy Shell Company number 1 and Dodgy Shell Company number 2 for the obviousness.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's just, is this the commercially sensitive material we're not supposed to know? Is my question.
I've got to update the skullduggery thing. It's gone up to there's fuckery afoot, people, and we need to get to the
Oh,
bottom of it. Yeah, it's reached. Sorry, Tango, it's reached. I can't be having that. It's reached the
I
top tier, mate.
well,
There's definitely fuckery afoot now, and we need to get to the bottom of it.
well, I remember you calling it when I explained the supply chain on day one, my first interview or my first time on here, how it was all how we like such a company which owned Ashnish before still has shares in the parent that owns Rusal and all this thing. And I remember you saying, "Oh, there's a bit of skullduggery here," and now where where have we got? It's just it's just moved on. It's just moved up complete. Yeah, it's moved up to a complete different level. Like it's just
So
ridiculous.
I'll tell you the red light or the red flag for me was the fact that that report on the on all the effects of the water and that you mentioned the cows and people. Uh, the current prime minister was then the health minister, wasn't he?
Yes,
So
correct.
right, so that report was obviously a bit of skullduggery at
Mhm.
that point, and this is just pure fuckery now. So and he's the common thread. That's my thinking. That he's the one that was paid off, and will have paid
Well,
off his mates as well.
well,
I'll call it Tanker. I know you can't, sir, but I
yeah.
can. He was paid by the Russians, and he can't get out from underneath them. Much like other people in the world, should I put it just that way?
Well, this is the thing because there's a history there. Maybe the Russians know the history before they bought it. If that makes
No, I
sense.
don't. No, I don't, sir. Go on, explain.
So, well, as in the fact that the health reports we'll say pre-Russian ownership, but yet when Russia took it over, maybe they found something deep within the archives, or deep within the files of that company that they found something out and thought, oh, we might want to hang on to that if we ever find ourselves in hot water, and
No,
we need planning permission, or we need whatever it is, and I lacks on the environmental inspection or something like that. So, but yeah, it is a theme. There is a theme there, all right. There definitely is. But I think now at this stage that Europe is going to look at this. Well, that's why this is the thing, Firefella. Dan called it from day one to approach this at a European level and not to lobby the government, because I am 100% sure if we just stuck solely with the government, we would have just been hit with a wall of silence and we would have got absolutely nowhere. And, you know, we are just so grateful that even though there's so many Irish that support us, we can't forget that everyone across Europe, backed us as well. The parliament, we got the majority vote. I know it was non-binding, but it's still a message. It still sends a message saying that, we're not having this anymore. And, you know, as I said yesterday, Ireland has had to make so many sacrifices in the name of the environment, and yet Achnish gets away scot free with it. And
no,
then,
you're absolutely right, sir.
and then we find, and like you said, then we find all, we find all this messing around in a report that mockers could have done in her sleep, and then, or well, she probably, I think the mockers could have done it just, just before she went to bed. She probably would have done it in a few minutes, you know. I mean, it's just, oh, I don't, do you know what I mean? I'm
I
stuck for words.
almost expected exactly this, though, Tanker. They've dragged
Yeah,
it out and they've
yeah,
dragged it out and they've delayed it and they've next week and the week after. And, eventually they've produced this nonsense, which is, I mean, you can see right through it, can't you? That they basically tried their best to just not say anything very much. We can't possibly determine where it's going. We can't possibly do anything about it. End of story. Anyway, what's for dinner? It's kind of that sort of report.
but it really is. And actually, do you know what? There's another point there as well. They said, "Oh no, yeah, we can't, we don't have any data, we don't have anything from side in Russia," and yet they never thought to contact the Irish Times and say, "Well, let's at least have a look what you have." They didn't have to. They didn't have to. It's like any investigation, you know, you don't expect him to believe it. Like I believe Connor, you know, I think he's a good lad, and I think the Irish Times are well reputable. It's like I trust them, but I know in the we'll say in the context of an investigation, at least look at it. You know, you don't have to believe it. You don't have to take it, you know, as gospel. But at the very least, just request it. But they couldn't even be bothered to do that. Do you know? And the fact, like you said, you know, we knew this was coming. I think what's really just frustrated me the most is how Michal knew all this. He knew all this, and yet he still went to Kyiv, and he still faced that memorial. You know, he laid that wreath to honor the fallen, and he faced those pictures of all those who have lost their lives, knowing all this. And I think that's the bit that's really got to me over the last few days. It's not the fact that we all knew this was coming. We all knew they were going to try and swindle this one way or another. But the fact that he tried to do that, he tried to do it with a straight face, and he tried to do it to a country that's lost so much.
Well,
I'm a little bit pissed, to say the least.
yeah. One thing I can say I'm almost quite pleased about, that there was quite a shock daytime attack while he was there, and there was something like 89 items, I think it was, that was fired at Ukraine during the daytime while he was there. I don't know if I imagine he's not there anymore. They're usually 24, 48 hours at the most, aren't they, these kinds of visits?
Yeah.
But during that time that he was there was a daytime attack, which I'm sure probably gave him the opportunity to wet his pants. And
I really hope it did. I really hope it did.
Yeah, exactly. And I would like to say that is, that is a little bit of karma coming to visit him. But unfortunately, he's going to find himself in an increasingly untenable position as we go forward. And this is why he's pushed it onto the EU Parliament and said, "Oh, we just can't do anything. It'll have to be you guys that make a decision." Is he the leader of his country, or is he a wet fucking lettuce?
Well, I find, do you know what? And again, you're always great. You're always great, Marcus, of helping me remind things, because while he was there, Zelenskyy asked him. I said, I don't know Irish law. I don't, he didn't claim to be an expert. He said, but is there any way within the law that you can limit this exports or ban this exports? And I thought for a second, my first initial thought was like, Zelenskyy doesn't really talk or comment about other countries' laws or things like that. He doesn't get involved in internal politics of other countries. And I'm trying to think, why would he say that? And I was just, and then later, a little headline popped up on one of my feeds. And the same day Michal Martin was in Kyiv with Zelenskyy, the president of Ireland. Now, she's more of a figurehead than anything, so don't put too much weight. I know she's a bit of a tanky, but don't put too much weight in her power. She basically is just there to sign off laws when it's approved by the Dáil or the Parliament. But once she signs it, it becomes official, essentially. But she signed the Occupied Territories Bill, which effectively bans the import of goods produced in the occupied territories in Gaza and in that, that region, the Palestine region. So I'm thinking he was throwing a little bit back by saying, you've taken a stance in one thing, but here you are flopping around like a wet fish on another, on the export, we'll say, to Russia. That's my theory. I can't say that's what he was thinking. I'm not in his mind, but I just found the two things happening at the same time, and the fact that he threw in a little a comment that he normally doesn't. He normally doesn't really comment. I never hear him talking about internal politics of other countries, but I think that was a little bit of a hint there. It's like Ireland is able to take a stance. Whether people agree with or disagree, that's a completely different discussion. We're not getting into that, but the thing is, Ireland took a stance, and it, that will come at risk as well, because, that could affect, relationships with the US and all that and blah, blah, blah. But it's like Ireland have decided that, but yet here they are when it comes to a Russian oligarch, a company owned by a Russian oligarch. Well, then all of a sudden they're flopping around like a wet fish. suddenly, then all of a sudden now it's like, oh no, this is too risky. Oh no, we can't do this. I was like, well, you've already damaged, you're doing your best now to damage Ireland's reputation. And you have to remember as well, Ireland relies a lot on tourism. There's bed and breakfasts, there's buses, there's transport, there's coffee shops, blah blah blah, tourist attractions. So you've got all the jobs you have to think about in tourism. You've got all the jobs in the Irish products, products that are sent, mainly to the EU. I think Kerrygold butter. I think it's Germany. It's like one of the best-selling brands. It's not the best, but it's one of the best-selling brands of butter in Germany. And it's like, what if someone from Germany, decides, oh, do you know what? They're the guys that would rather send aluminum to Russia. It's like, I don't need that. I don't need to buy their Irish butter. If that's what Irish means, if made in Ireland means sending it to Russia, then it's like, well, then I'm not going to buy it. So yeah, again, a bit of a tangent there. Sorry, apologies, but yeah, it's just like,
well, awkwardly, they've set themselves a precedent now, haven't they?
Yeah, big time.
So,
yes, exactly. There you go. Words. You're good. You're good with words, Mockers. But exactly, that is it.
So yeah, they've set themselves this precedent of taking a moral stance on something. So go on then. Where's the rest of your morals? Or do they only apply to certain countries? Because now we can say, oh, that's really good of you. You've taken a moral stance. So get on with it. Do the rest. There's no such thing as half pregnant, is there? So they need to go all the way with that line of thinking. And yeah, it's very important that this gets done. So of course, Dan has put out the call again for people to get involved, and that would be to this time. There's only 2 emails that we're asking people to send, and that's specifically to the European Commission. And if you go and have a look at Dan's feed and probably everybody else's who's in the Illumina team, so myself, Tanker, obviously, you might find it more difficult to find it in my feed, I'll be absolutely honest. I tweet a lot, and our friend Punk Nafo, I think, you will see that we've tweeted that out, and we've asked for people to get involved, and it doesn't take much, does it? A couple of emails. I'm going to do a couple today. I just haven't had time to think about them until today, being off work, I can get on with it. But yeah, I'm going to put something together that sounds sensible. That's just like now we've got this report, and we can quite clearly see how transparently full of nonsense it is. I think it's time to take some action, don't you? And that's basically what we're going to do. We're going to advise them that we would like them to take action. I'm also going to probably again email the David O'Sullivan, the sanctions envoy. I'm going to email his office as well, just as for completeness. And we'll see what we can do, because public pressure campaign managed to get a vote in the EU Parliament, which is just the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. That we didn't involve NGOs, we didn't have to spend loads of money. We literally just got some crazy fellas to email some people, with morals and supporting Ukraine to email them, and it worked. So let's not give up now, because we're 80% down this road, and we really shouldn't turn back at this point, no matter how the Irish government try their best to sort of deflect. They're not doing a very good job of deflecting, I'll be absolutely honest. So, forge ahead. I think they already know that they're beaten, to be absolutely fair. They're just trying to figure out a way not to embarrass themselves in the process. And that report actually does the opposite. It embarrasses them because of its weakness. And that's about where we are now. So, folks, thank you very much for all your help so far. But now's the time for just that little bit more. And we'll get there. Yeah? What do you reckon? Does that sound all right?
Yeah, one final push. I know we keep saying it, but it's just every time we make a push, we seem to make bigger steps. We seem to take bigger steps than we possibly realize we have. So remember, this has gone from pretty much 0 to where we've got now in 4 months. And you think of all the other various protest groups and the various causes that have been going on for years and years and years, and they've used activism and performative activism and criminal damage and grievous bodily harm and everything else in between, and it's got them absolutely nowhere. Zero, zilch, nada. Whereas in 4 months, with just a constant steady pressure and just a constant, just keep at it, just keep chipping away, we've managed to, make far greater progress than any NGO or activist group could ever have, could only dream of, basically.
If it works.
If it works, yeah, that's it. Just a quick thing as well. There's another shipment of bauxite, so that's the raw material going from Guinea to Ockers to being turned into alumina, and the ship, funny enough, is British flagged, or it's the flag of the United Kingdom, and yeah, I found there's a cool couple of interesting tidbits, because when you go through the shipping contact details, the management details, there's a very spattering of emails. And one of them is yandex.ru, which is like Russia's equivalent to Google, but the username is Alpha Marine. Now, I'll have to check with Dan, but I know there's the Alpha Shipping Company. I don't know if it's Alpha Shipping or Alpha Marine. I'll have to double check with Dan. But that's the company. There's a company called Alpha that brings the refined alumina to Russia. So, bit of a coincidence. Again, maybe completely unrelated. It could be Russia.
It's a Latvian company, Alpha Shipping.
Oh, it's Alpha Shipping. Okay, well, this is Alpha Marine.
Alpha Shipping is a Latvian company, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's Alpha Shipping. Okay, this says Alpha Marine at yandex.ru. So I have no idea if
it doesn't mean that they aren't the same people or run by the same management.
Yeah.
What we have found out is, especially Alpha Shipping, most of their staff, when you look at the CEO and all of that, and all the people that work for them, they all appear to be Russian.
Yes, that's why my little radar went off when I saw that. I was like, there's something going on here. Is there a link here? So
yes, there is. Sorry, Tanker. I'm sat here just going. This is just going down the rabbit hole now. We got an English. Did you say British or English flagged?
It's United Kingdom. So yeah.
Even worse. All right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, people.
So that mean it would be registered with the Maritime Coast Guard Agency or the UK's Department of Transport, if anyone's wondering.
Yeah, and it will come under UK marine regs as well.
Exactly. So I'm just wondering if we need to tweet bomb, or I'm strongly considering emailing the MCA about this.
Send me the details to email them, Tanker Watcher, and I will do so also.
As I always say, Mockers, you do words good. So
try my best. Yes.
Yeah. I do words okay-ish, but that's about it. But Mockers, yeah, you've been an absolute credit. You've been an absolute star this whole thing. You've done. I'll have to give a bit of credit here to Mockers now, big time, because what she does in the background, the emails she sends, she just has such a way of being able to write to officials, but more importantly, she's able to write it in such a way that they have to respond. And we're very lucky to have you, Mockers.
It comes from what 20, nearly 30 years of working in local government, where basically you have to write very official looking letters. Although I used to work in the planning department, and every title of every letter began with the words "erection of," which I thought was quite funny. It used to amuse me on a daily basis.
I was going to say that's the reason you stayed there so long.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, whatever they were building, you had to begin with those two words, you see. And I'm sorry, I've just got a mind in the gutter, and it made me laugh every day, except for the fact that the office was shit. So lovely. I think we have a plan, don't we? We're gonna do those emails, and we're going to thoroughly embarrass the Irish government, because they've embarrassed themselves. They've only themselves to blame. And
this is all of their making, 100%. They've no one to blame but themselves, and like that, because I remember Kaelin was getting a bit of flack for saying, "Oh, you're ruining everyone's reputation." Yet at the same time, they were probably writing in the report, the reputation was damaged back in the company's reputation was damaged back in 2022 when the war started. So I was like, don't think it was Kaelin's fault. I don't think it was our fault.
Also, nice to hear Kaelin give you guys a shout out on Twitter for doing all the background work before he got involved.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, he did his bit, we did our bit, and that's kind of where I've seen it. Like, obviously there was a lot of investigative journalism work done, which he gave a shout out to Connor and the Irish Times and the OCCRP. Like I said before, they really give us the teeth, because if we just started, oh, this is going to Russia, like, let's be real, most people would have just gone, so. But then it was like, this stuff is going to Russia, and there's a very good, strong possible chance it's going into missiles that's bombing Ukraine. Then a lot of people just went, oh, well, hang on a sec. So, they did their bit. We kind of carried it forward, bringing it to the forefront of the MEPs. And then kind of Kaelin then kind of did his bit. He's kind of, as I say, his kind of media savvy bit, the way he's able to face politicians, talk to them, interview them, like that. He got a couple of viral clips out of them, sounding completely stupid. Although, judging by some of them, I suppose that wasn't a challenge really on Caelin's part. I'd say anyone could have asked him the same thing and he would have sounded very stupid. But still, he was, the video and everything he did kind of gave it that extra boost as well. So yeah, no, everyone,
Yeah, but I like how the first of the dogs got involved, right? The first NAFO dogs got involved. These ships are going to Russia. Let's see if we can sink one.
Well, as I always said, there's you could sink ships bit by bit, but just remember there's an old rusty rail bridge, and it's the only way in and out of the port because the whole port is surrounded by water. So it's just like, if anyone has friends in Magyar birds, just let them know that if you have a spare drone or two, it's on Google Maps. You can see you can see it on Google Street View. That's all I'm saying.
Indeed, and there's a particular what they call box cars that they put on the back of trains. Which, remember that train that was fell off the tracks just mysteriously about a week or so ago, and it quite clearly had alumina as its cargo because it spilled out everywhere, and it was pretty obvious what it was. They were those same blue box cars that sat around that particular area of the port. So,
yeah, you go on Bing or go on Google or something, and yeah, you will see them. They just, I know that that's really, whenever they were taken, I don't know exactly when those photos were taken, but yeah, you see them around the port. You look at any satellite photo and you'll see them. So yeah, so it's there's a good chance that came from Ohanish. So, but at least it's on the side of it's in the grass now somewhere, soaking away into the ground. Please God. And and no, God willing, it won't it won't make it to the smelters.
Yeah, I believe one of the problems with that is once you've sort of spilled it everywhere, it's no use.
It's no use.
No good.
Beautiful. Oh, even better. Well, I'm glad. That's made my day. I think that's
well, you see, the elements get to it, and especially if there's any damp or anything like that in the air, whether it rains or something, it's just going to ruin it.
Oh yeah, no, I've seen those videos. All right, of like damp. Well, it's like more damp steel going into furnaces, and they just go. Yeah, so I'd imagine that's an issue as well to a certain extent, or the fact that it uses electricity as well might be another. But yeah, I did okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah,
That's good to know.
So the problem with water is if it goes in anything like that, it'll sink to the bottom and expand just like it does in oil fires. And the ratio is 1600 to 1, and then just erupts out again, mate. So it has to be thoroughly dry. Otherwise, it's in the smelting process, it's all bang bang stuff, and you've got molten metal flying around, which is not good.
Yes. So there we go. So basically, more trains need to fall over is what needs to happen.
And bridges fall down. Yes, you're absolutely right,
And
Tanker.
bridges fall down. Yeah, exactly. There's quite because again, that I think it's like from St. Petersburg to like Krasnoyarsk or Siberia. I think it's a couple of 1,000 kilometers, isn't it? I think it's like
We'll get Will to put a red circle around it. See what happens.
Very good. Very good. I think that's it. I think I'll shut up now and let you get on with the show, unless anybody has anything else to ask.
I think we've been pretty thorough, actually. But thank you very much and for coming and highlighting that, because again, it's really important. We're going to update the website, I think, with some of these details as well, because there's always new developments happening. So keep an eye on the website as well, which our friend Punk Nafo has done an absolutely fabulous job with. Couldn't have done it without him, could we? So really, really cool.
That website being Illumina22, mockers. Just, putting it out there. Illumina22people.com. Go and have a look.
Yeah, he's done a fabulous job. So, folks, what have I got for you? Well, there's booms and there's woe. But let me just first tell you about again, missile strikes on Kyiv overnight last night. I mean, I went to work, obviously, and, so I didn't get to see or hear any of this until I woke up like this morning, because busy. It was a very busy night last night. So if I sound tired, it's because I am. At least 5 missiles hit Kyiv in a matter of minutes to begin with. And the problem is they're launching these things from S-400 launchers / Iskander launchers in Bryansk. And they're literally in the air for 2 minutes, maybe. So there's not even time to see them and turn the alarms on, So it's very, very difficult to even be warned about the first salvo of these types of missiles. And this is one of the reasons why they're so very devastating, because there's no countering that at the moment. It's just too small an opportunity to counter it. And so there's these, terrible issues. Now, I'll tell you now, after the hit on the drone exhibition that should never have happened, obviously, the other day, the Ukrainians have already worked out exactly who these teams are. And I'm telling you now, they're dead men walking. They don't know it yet, but Ukrainians are finding a way to take these teams out. And they will, because when they set their mind to do something, they're going to. So don't be surprised if you see these guys being targeted in the very near future. Now, shortly after those attacks, there was 2 more missiles sent on Kyiv. There was some very strong fires overnight, and in the Shevchenivsky district of the capital, an 18-story building was damaged because there was a fire on the 7th and 8th floors. Can you imagine being on floor number 10? I don't know what I'd do. The thing I really don't want to do is die in a fire. I don't think anybody really wants to, the thought of that, I think I'd rather jump than die in a fire, In the Solomyansky district, another fire broke out in the territory of some non-residential buildings. Now, it says here, due to falling debris. Now, non-residential could be garages, it could be shopping, type centre or something like that. It doesn't necessarily mean military, but it could also be military. Sometimes they don't tell us. And just what a mess. What a mess. So there was also, what's it called? An epicenter in Kryvyi Rih. The only one in Kryvyi Rih was burned to the ground as well, because, that makes a difference. It's like a B&Q warehouse for any of us Brits. So basically an epicenter is like, where you would get the wood to board up your windows when they've been smashed out by being bombed. So, anybody in Kryvyi now doesn't have the opportunity to do that. So it's just making life more difficult for civilians. Again. The ballistic strike on Kyiv, apparently, here we go, 1 warehouse, 10 cars and a truck in the parking lot in one particular location. It doesn't say exactly where. I think it is the Desyanisky district, that one. So, just more terror. And so, of course, Ukraine are continuing their campaign against Russian logistics and military targets, while Russia continues to take out mainly civilian targets. So there will be an increase in this. It's going to get worse before it gets better, Unfortunately, Russians have got better with their accuracy in some cases, not in others. In other cases, they've got worse, but in some cases, certain missiles have got better accuracy. And they will continue to attack things like shopping centres and obviously, residential blocks, because it's just something they've always attacked. But they're going to try and make life untenable. So they've been taking out, fuel filling stations and things like that. Well, 2 can play at that game. And in Belgorod, I think about half the fuel filling stations in Belgorod have actually been taken out in the entire oblast because, fuck you guys. Now, technically, those are civilian facilities, but there are a lot of military who also fill up with fuel in the Belgorod area. So I suppose that's how they're justifying that. But still, there is a bit of tit for tat going on. And if you attack some facilities in Ukraine, we're going to find a reason to stop you from being able to even drive towards Ukraine. And if that means taking out fuel filling stations while people are waiting in line, we're going to do that as accurately as possible to try and, save as many civilian lives as possible, or at least protect as many civilian lives as possible. But fuck you guys. Gloves are off at this point. Ukraine is just digging deep into, everything they have now to say, yeah, we've had enough now. Absolutely had enough. I mean, there's this talk of a ceasefire, but to be totally honest, a ceasefire, although it would, it would be nice for Ukraine to have a few days off, it certainly would, it only serves to give Russia time. And we can't give them time. That's something that they don't deserve. They deserve to be crushed and as quickly as possible. And my God, I wish we'd helped them do it sooner instead of letting them, drag themselves to this position where they can actually really hurt Russia now. We forced them to do this. Russia forced them to do this. I do wish we'd have helped a little bit more, a little bit earlier. Or even now. Now would be a good time to help them more. Romania's had to start shooting down drones 2 days in a row. And I don't think that's by accident that these drones are now, off into Romania. They're using these mesh networks, and they're quite accurate. So, they're not doing that just as a whoopsie. It's quite clearly on purpose. And I think they're testing to see what would happen. Those drones are now getting shot down before they reach any sort of populated areas in Romania. And I think that's because they've realized, Russia's tactic is to get the rest of us involved so that they can say, oh, we were fighting the whole of NATO and that's the only reason that we lost. But I think it's quite important that Ukraine is seen to be the country that absolutely kicks them to the curb. So that's an important one. Now, I've got some numbers for you. And then we will get on to other types of booms and stuff. Yeah? Does that sound like a good idea, Firefella?
Absolutely. Crack on, number one.
Now, there was something I pointed out, even with totally bleary eyes, right? The first thing I looked at was the numbers this morning that Prince sent me. And I went, there's no UAVs on there. None whatsoever. Somebody, obviously, forgot to put them on. And she was like, oh, hang on a minute, I'll have to go and find them. And they did put out a second one with the correct figures on. So just wanted to, point that out, that quite a lot of people posted that first one with no UAVs on at all. And, well, I, for one, was a little bit like, hang on a minute, something wrong. Because that's not going to happen, is it? Not right now, anyway. So, here's our numbers for the 26th of July, all day. We have 1,440 liquidated personnel, and that's high again, isn't it? And what we have noted is that just recently, Russian forces have been making attempts at attacking with tanks in an armoured push. Because remember how that worked for Ukraine over like 2023 and 2024 when they were trying their best to carry out, the tactics that NATO were advising them to carry out, and how it really doesn't work unless you have complete control over the sky? Yeah, well, Ukraine learnt that lesson the hard way, obviously, by losing people and equipment and, having a really shit time doing it. And Russia apparently didn't understand or didn't learn that lesson, or maybe, the people that learned that lesson are now all dead. And so they're just trying that tactic again. And how do you think that went for them, Firefella? Do you think that went terribly?
I think it did, Mockers, did it not?
It went terribly, yeah. Denis Davidov did a nice video, which I never really got to watch because I came home last night and saw it. But he goes into some detail about where these particular attacks were and how badly they failed. And failed they did. So that'll be where some of these numbers are coming from. So we have 9 tanks and 8 armoured personnel vehicles to back up that large amount of liquidated personnel. We also have 70 artillery systems. Now, I've got to say, Russia is obviously able to turn these things around, either produce new ones or repair the old ones, and they're also probably getting some from their friends. I think some of these items have been North Korean equipment that has been seen, and perhaps even some Chinese equipment which has been passed through the hands of North Korea to make it look as though it's not coming directly from China. So there's quite a bit of artillery that we see every day, and Russia must be able to replace that at some rate of knots because, well, just look at how many Ukraine are taking out, and they've still got loads. Now, artillery used to be the king of the battlefield. Whoever had the most artillery was generally going to be the person with the biggest advantage. Not anymore, eh? And a lot of these artillery systems that Russia have now are, well, they're shorter range because all their good stuff's been lost, destroyed, and they're just not as effective because the minute they wheel them out to, any position where they can hit something that even is slightly important in Ukraine, I mean, all of Ukraine's important, but, where they think they can hit somewhere on the battlefield that might help them, Ukraine goes, no, you don't, and destroys it. And so they're just wheeling them out just to watch them blow up at this point, as far as I can tell. But of course, it's still death and destruction. And, this is what's helping Russia inch forward in some places. And when I say inch, I really mean it, inching. 1 MLRS. And taking us to a total of 1969, make up your own jokes, we have 453 vehicles and fuel tanks. So still pretty high numbers there. And I'm going to assume that these roads of death are where we're going to be seeing most of these from now. We have 3 special equipment, and then we come to other stuff. So there's 1 cruise missile on here, but obviously Russia's now sending more and more missiles, just small batches, but more regularly. So they're not doing these huge missile attacks, mainly because they can't save up for them anymore. So they're just, we've got 6 missiles, we're going to throw them. And over a couple of days later, we've got 4 missiles, we're going to throw them. Actually, it's usually odd numbers, but I don't know why that came to my head. We have 1,450 UAVs. Now, again, it's following this trend of being, a little bit less than they used to send. And I just wonder if there's been some disruption in their production. That rhymed. Anyway. And 8 ground robotic complex. So there we go. Oh, right, okay, now I need to go up instead of down to see the Air Force report from overnight. So overnight, there was 144 enemy vehicles altogether. So from 1,800 on July the 25th to, this morning, it's set out slightly differently, to 8:30, which was 2.5 hours ago, on the morning of July the 26th. Here is your Air Force report. So the enemy attacked with 1 KH-59-69 guided aircraft missile and 7 Iskander S-400 ballistic missiles. And it quite clearly says here, from Bryansk, Kursk, Voronezh regions. So, those Iskander launchers that they've moved up to Bryansk, a real problem now, a real problem. Now, looking at the overnight report, they were quite successful. So 136 Shahed type attack drones as well. But according to preliminary data, air defense and shot down and suppressed the KH-59-69 guided aircraft missile and 5 of the 7 Iskander/S-400 ballistics, which I think is pretty decent, pretty damn decent. So out of the 136 drones, however, only 104, well, I say only 104, which leaves 32, which is more than we'd like because obviously, causes damage and death and destruction. 2 ballistic missiles and 27 strike UAVs were recorded hitting 18 locations, and there is the fall of downed fragments at 7 locations. The attack continues. And I wish it wasn't like that every day, every morning in Ukraine. It really upsets me, to be honest, that this is just what Ukraine deal with on a daily basis, and we just sort of, go, yeah, they're so resilient, and we get on with our lives. There are people in Ukraine whose nervous system is absolutely shot. They're literally having breakdowns every few days because of this situation. And that is why when I see Russians crying over their Wildberries orders, I could get very, very spicy and punchy indeed. Because, what motivates them? What motivates them? So there was something that I saw yesterday, and it was a Ukrainian response to a lady who was quite big-lipped, I've got to say. She looks a bit like a fish. Who was wondering where all the Ukrainian hatred comes from. And she asked the question online, why do Ukrainians hate us? We have done nothing as ordinary Russians to Ukrainians. And she got the answers. Have you not heard of the missiles, the occupation, the torture, the deportations and the mass graves? Because if you have not been paying attention. Do go fuck yourselves. And that is the response she got. And she was shocked. horrified even. They have no idea why this is happening because they don't want to know. And the Kremlin has spent years trying to separate these ordinary Russians from the consequences of war. Because, you know, if they don't feel it, then it's not happening. And they're just left with their mysterious soul, you know. It's a mystery why people hate us. Yet, now, they're receiving missile strikes and drone strikes, aren't they? Not as many as they deserve, and not as many as are going to come, because there's going to be a lot more. How many flamingos are they making a month now? More than they've been using, put it that way. No one is born with hatred in their heart. It is taught. You are brought up with it. You are, you know, look, no child is racist. That's got to be taught to a child. And it's the same with this. No Russian child is born hating other countries, but they are literally taught in schools that everyone else is inferior and must be dealt with violence and force. And it's horrific. They're literally brought up to be this nation of warmongers. It's disgusting. But at the point where they're adults, they have to be responsible for that attitude, and they have to be responsible enough to know that when somebody fights back, it's because of your country's actions. Every missile strike, every occupied town, every deported child, and every mass grave is now the legacy of Russia. This is how millions of Ukrainians and Europeans see Russians now. Hatred has grown because of homes that were destroyed and families that have been buried and justice that has been denied over and over again. Before asking Ukrainians why they are angry, the Russians need to think, do they have a reason to be? And, you know, that's the thing that they don't do. They don't ponder their own responsibility in this, because, of course, it's always about shifting the blame. There must be somebody to blame. There must be. And I hope the Botox in that woman's lips poison her to death, because just Botox is a poison. Did you know that? You inject enough of it, and you will end up with something quite close to botulism. I think it is part of the botulism.
Aye, it is.
Just,
It's the reason.
just saying. Go on.
No, it's the reason that Russia controls the information flow, doesn't it? So that they can keep this narrative going that they're always the poor ones that are getting victim is the word I'm trying to find. Good God, it's raining outside. Holy schmoly. So that's why they do it, mockers, so that they can keep this narrative up, so that why is everybody against us? Because we're not telling the population that we're going around bombing the shit out of innocent people and committing war crimes minute by bleeding minute in Ukraine, and nobody talks about that stuff because they want to keep them in a little nest, don't they? It's all about control.
And yet, if they just watched, Solovyov live, they would know, because he talks all this warmongering shit all fucking day, all night. They only have to turn on the telly, and I'm quite sure a lot of them see it on the telly, and they're just like, yeah, that's a war that's happening way over there. That's some sort of fiction that doesn't affect us,
Yeah, it's the age-old thing. Unless it actually affects them directly, it isn't happening in their life, is it? So unless they haven't actually got any petrol, petrol's not a problem. Well, now there is a problem, because when they go to the petrol station, there is no petrol. Why? Because you've had your refineries bombed the shit out of. It's just that's the way they are, mockers.
Yeah, and just to give you a little recap, Zelenskyy this morning has confirmed in total this week, Russians have used almost 1,700 drones, 1,630 air bombs, that's like your cabs and things like that, and 95 missiles of various types, more than half of them ballistics. So, just more terrorism, continued, constant terrorism. Now, there was something that I sort of touched upon when I was talking through the numbers, that they've been making these, these pushes, and they've been using artillery as like a, they run out, they fire a couple of rounds with their artillery, the artillery gets taken out, they push a new one out, and they do the same. They run forward a little bit further, they fire their artillery, it gets taken out. And this is one of the ways that they're inching forwards. And they had this lovely brand new Russian 300 millimeter Sama multiple launch rocket system. So it's MLRS, I think, yeah. And one of the war bloggers commented about its untimely demise. He said, unfortunately, the first confirmation of Russia's brand new 300 millimeter Sama MLRS has reached the front comes from footage of it being attacked by Ukrainian drones in the Donetsk region. Now, they were apparently using this to support their offensive in the Dobropilya direction, which, if you watch the video of Denis Davidov, which I recommended earlier, you will quite clearly see how that's going. Yeah, that's I mean, it's brave, but it's stupid. They are getting their asses handed to them. So the video clearly shows the silhouette of the new launcher, which had previously only been seen in promotional footage. However, the drone footage cuts off just before the strike outcome can be seen, so the extent of the damage is currently unknown. Now, according to Ukrainian sources, Russia has ordered 12 of these Sama launchers in 2024, and deliveries were later confirmed by Sergei Chemtsov. Chemtsov is the owner of Rostec. They make all the war stuff. A good friend of Putin's, and probably one of the last wallets that he will try and shake down when it comes to it. And he's already had a little bit of a beef with Putin in the past, where Putin basically said, we won't be paying you for some of this war stuff that you've been making for us. And Chemtsov said, yes, you will. Yes, you absolutely will. Otherwise, we won't make any more war stuff for you. So hand over the money. Get on with it. And Putin had to back down because he had no other choice. And suddenly, they were back to paying for these items again. Just pointing out there that this guy does actually have a little bit of clout. So, yeah, this Sama system, brand new, very, very excited by it, watched it blow up. And amongst some of this action, the Russians were also trying to do something in Dnipropetrovsk region, only they fucked up so badly they ended up going backwards. So Ukrainian defenders pushed the Russians back across the Salina River and have now partially cleared the village of Volya in Dnipropetrovsk region. So that's it's just something to note that when Russians make any sort of advance, there is every likelihood they leave the door open for a counterattack, for a pushback, and that's what's been happening. They got themselves into a wee bit of trouble there. So let's have a little look at what happened in Crimea overnight. Now, local reports indicate there were attacks in multiple cities across the peninsula. According to local reports, the Tavria thermal power plant, it's called Tavricheskaya, would you believe? I know, I'm quite pleased that I can say it, to be honest. In Simferopol, under attack. There was some characteristic flashes that we could see that suggest that there were things going boom there. Attacks were also reported in Yalta and Fedosia. And remember those two places, Yalta and Fedosia, that there is, I'm pretty sure there's air bases, at least one of them, one of those areas. So we'll point that out for you. Now, I love it when we see a video which shows, Russian stuff all destroyed, and apparently there's a building here that the Russians were using which got destroyed. However, doesn't tell me where it is. Come on now, you can do better than that. Tell me where it is, at least. So there is a nice video of some Russian stuff all blown up, and then there's no indication of where it is. And I'm like, hello, could we at least have a location? That would be nice, thank you. So all these people doing these posts and, you know, trying to get them up as fast as possible. At least put the information in, guys. Don't leave me hanging here. So I got through that one, right? And yeah, there is an ongoing fire at the Tavricheskaya thermal power plant station. So there's a little thingamy from Magyar here, and he explains that the enemy is indeed increasing their assaults along the front line. So instead of sending 1 or 2 people to sabotage now, that you know, these guys just keep getting chopped off, quite literally as well. So, you know, every time they send these tendrils, they get cut off one way or the other. All these guys end up, you know, they wave a flag and then they get captured or killed pretty much straight away. So now they've started with assaults again, because that worked the last time, didn't it? No, that didn't work the last time either. So Magyar's commented on this, that they're trying to patch the gap between their false reports, you know, the flag waving, and the real state of position on the front line. So they've been making bigger pushes to try and sort of reach some of the places which they said they already occupied, which they quite clearly didn't. So he says they are increasing infiltration groups with the task of getting to the positions, taking their photos and video evidence, and then the rest of the group is supposed to run up and join them. Only it's not quite working out for them. And he called this a one-way ticket to hell. And the reason, he says, for such haste is that there is inspections coming up, apparently. The leadership want to inspect what's happening, I suppose, so they can figure out what they're going to need with regards to their mobilization push, you know, that's coming. It's coming. And in some cases, the leadership has already found out that they, you know, lied, because I don't know if you've noticed, but Russians lie. I know it's shocking. But they found out that they've been lying to them. And so they gave them some harsh punishments, apparently. And this has forced them to then go, right, everybody, you must go to the front immediately. And so there's that. And I'm sure the morale of those guys coming to fight at the front is through the floor. No wonder Ukraine's taking more and more captives. So there is a little update on the wild berries in Yekaterinburg. Their entire car park looks to have burned out, and there is some damage to the building. And it does look as though they might not actually be using that building currently, probably because they think Ukraine's about to pay it a second visit. And they might just. They absolutely might just. So we'll see. We'll see. Now, yesterday, Tumen, the Antipinsky, I think I've said that right, oil refinery, was attacked. And that is just 2,000 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. And what happened was they hit one of the processing units there, and they tried to put in place a process to stop the fire from spreading. And do you know what happened to that? Do you know what happened when they tried to do that, Firefella?
Yeah, they would have failed, Mockers, because they can't firefight.
Yeah, they failed. Yeah, and so the fire then spread to a number of other areas of the oil refinery, and there's some lovely shots coming out just showing that well, they haven't elected a new pope. Put it that way. There's at least 3 seats of burning at the oil refinery there, and well, what can I say other than unlucky? Now, I mentioned earlier that Russia is taking out fuel filling stations in Ukraine, and just to be aware, there are no working fuel stations now on the border of Kharkiv and Poltava regions because Russia is destroying like a number every night, and last night there were 3 more on the Kharkiv-Poltava highway that were taken out, and that's what Russia is doing because well, they started this and they're going to reap the whirlwind because Belgorod's going to start looking exactly the same. Now, just to note, 3 people were injured in the Russian attack in Kyiv, one of whom had had to be hospitalized. They're still working to put out some of these fires. Wow, I'm just seeing the strike on the epicenter in Kryvyi as well. There's more video come out. And they really did mean to take this place out. The second UAV that strikes it is absolutely full of fuel, as far as I can tell, because it goes up massive explosion as it lands there. That's one way to waste a lot of fuel, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, there's another way, and Ukraine is showing them how that's done. And that is the road to Crimea and the situation on the Novorossiya highway, which is, well, let's just say there's a whole host of videos from there now just showing absolute carnage. It's in a lot of places it's down to 1 lane because the rest of the road is just full of broken vehicles. I bet you anyone driving along there feels really safe and happy about the whole situation. Yeah? No, absolutely not. That must be horrifying. You're driving down a road and you're just seeing vehicle after truck after fuel, tanker just burning or just burned out at the side of the road. And you're driving in a convoy of trucks looking like a big fat target. I wouldn't do that. Not for all the money in the world. But you see, money doesn't matter as much to me. I only use it to eat and donate to Ukraine at this point. So, what a mess. What a terrible mess. Oh, there's also a couple of bridges that have been taken out there, which, people just driving past these bridges going, yeah, shit. Occupied Krasnoperekopsk lost a substation overnight, just in case you need to know. And, well, the Russians have come up with a beautiful structure to look after their harbours, their ports. Now, I've seen Ukraine using like a floating, shall we say, interceptor hub, which floats on the surface of the water, and it has a load of little places where, little hatches open up and interceptors pop out as required. And Russia's, well, they've built something. It does look like, it's like a little floating shelter, a little bit like a Dalek. And somebody said it's an ironclad, and it's basically based on a very old design. Yeah, it does look a little bit like a Cybertruck, that's true. And it looks as though this is a place for guys to sit with these little hatches so they can sit there with their, guns. Not quite the same. Not quite the same sort of thing. I've just retweeted it anyway, so you can see how kind of ridiculous it is. And yeah, it looks like an old ironclad, which was a coal-powered sort of small ironclad ship, believe it or not. With
it looks exactly like
portals.
the Monitor and the Merrimack in the Civil War in the United States, the first of the little low-slung ironclad vessels that had hatches that opened up that they'd put cannons out of.
There you go. And these, well, it looks as though it's not for cannons, obviously. It's for dudes to sit there with their rifles. I just wonder, there's going to what? They're going to put like 4 or 5 dudes in this because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6.
I certainly hope
hatches.
so.
Yeah, and I just think that that's a really nice. It looks a bit like a tank for the water, and we know how well tanks blow up, don't we? And also that thing, it doesn't look as though the armor's very thick on it. So I'm assuming that anybody who goes into that will die in there. Yeah.
It kind of looks like preformed fiberglass to me.
Looks like a target to me. You put a bunch of guys in there with guns, and Ukraine's going to go, oh, thanks very much. We'll just we'll have that, thank you. You know that they have the ability to set targets, don't they, on these drones? Even the long distance ones, and I can bet you any money they're typing that strange little beast into their targets, into their targeting system.
Yeah,
already.
access and egress looks terrible into that thing. Imagine if it starts to get hit and you want to get out. It'd be, a Who concert.
Yeah. You ain't climbing out of one of them hatches unless you're very lucky. Indeed. Goodness. That just looks like a death on the water.
Hold on a sec. Prince, could you bring another up? I can't. I've been trying for 5 minutes. I can't get him up. Sorry, bit of housekeeping, Mockers. Carry on.
Yeah, I saw him and then he disappeared again. And I was like, oh, did I lose him? Let's see if I can do it that way.
Okay.
Go on.
Now he's requesting and I can't get him up.
Right, okay. Yeah, Prince, if you can fix that, that would be great. Thank you. So yeah, there's these things going on. Now I'm just going to pop back to my bookmarks because I have a few strange and wonderful tales for you. And let's see if this works, because sometimes it doesn't. Oh, there we go. Oh, just so you know, Militariani, those people, Militani, is that how you say it? I don't know. They also commented on this. It's this floating thing. It's called the Plot 40 Floating Fire Support Platform, and it's supposed to be to protect naval bases and ports from UAVs and USVs, if you say so. So there you go. There's its name. So, meanwhile, in Russia, super pigs. I'm sorry. This is an actual headline. Super pigs. Is that like spider pigs? No, it's not. Super pigs are terrorizing residents in the Kirov region. You know how they're going to have a famine due to lack of fuel, due to lack of harvest, and all the other, What I would say, Nother, is if you're struggling, leave the space and pop back in again, because you have a speaker invite and it might just work. You just enter the space as a speaker instead of a listener. Try that. So, yeah, they've got another thing to deal with now, because the wildlife is also stealing their food. Pigs have been coming in and trampling vegetable gardens. Oh, no. And apparently harassing children. I know. An outbreak of aggression amongst dozens of wild boar / domestic pig hybrids. Well, to be fair, wild boar are kind of spicy. Don't fuck with them. They're angry, especially when they got babies. And so mixing them with domestic pigs, I'm assuming that they picked up the spicy gene. So according to a Telegram channel, these animals have no fear of humans or vehicles. They roam around on public roads, causing accidents, and regularly raid the local cemetery and dig up graves. Well, they do have a lot of graves. In the Ifanievsky district, dozens of individuals have nicknamed them super pigs, terrorizing the villages of Bisarov, Zharkvi and Elishkini, according to Baza. So after they've dug up your cemetery, they move on to private gardens where they dig up all your vegetables and eat your harvest and trample whatever crops they don't eat. And I'm just saying that I kind of love this for the Russians. A plague of super pigs. Would you believe that the litter size of a wild boar is around 10? And there's a saying in Texas, they have 10 and 15 survive. Because, you know, they're so spicy that they sort of make up for the fact that there's 10. So, yeah, these little pigs are now putting on their capes and their, you know, firefighting masks, or fighting masks, sorry, and running around causing absolute disasters. So I feel as though, well, what can you do? You just have to deal with it, put up with it. Super pigs, indeed. It's just a funny little story from the Tales of Woe archives. Another, welcome up.
Hey there. Yeah, sorry, one of my devices seems to have Twitter box. Anyway, you were talking about targeting. So I sent you a DM with a post by Dimco. So a friend of mine who's a recon pilot in 413 raid. So if he's put it out there, I'm sure it's totally fine OPSEC-wise, but it shows a Pearson, which is an interceptor drone, doing autonomous intercept on enemy drones. So yeah, in terms of targeting, there's more automated targeting, and now Ukraine basically have automated air defense in terms of targeting. So that's really cool. And by the way, the designation you see it written as is P1 Sun. That's not its name. The name is Pearson, which translates roughly as baby dick or pee-pee. But they changed the name to P1 Sun because that wasn't baby dick, apparently isn't NATO enough. But also there's something to bear in mind is there was lots of announcements in the UK about UK innovation and, you know, a UK drone like absolutely smashing everything at an American like DARPA funded interceptor drone challenge. And they said, yeah, this is the breast of Britain. This is Sky Ripper drones. It's like, no, it's not. It's a Skyfall drone. Skyfall is Ukrainian. The drone is the Pearson. Don't take credit for what you didn't invent. So kudos to them for like co-manufacturing or manufacturing, like basically a contract manufacturer. It is Skyfall's design. It is a Ukrainian design, Ukrainian innovation. We're just making it outside of Ukraine so we can make more without the factories getting bombed and arm our allies and Ukraine's allies. But yeah, it really annoyed me when they were saying this is a British drone. It's like, no, it's made by a British company, but it's a Ukrainian innovation. Yes, we should applaud them for like, essentially working for Skyfall, but don't pretend this is your design. But yeah, the targeting is great. Awesome to see that it's public. Trust me, more is coming. But you know, when Ukraine want to reveal it, they will use people like Dimco to get that information out there. So but good, we've seen good. Dimco's just shown there is better now, and there will be more to come. But the Ukrainians will say so when it's appropriate.
Absolutely, love that. Loving their work. And yeah, you're absolutely right. The only people producing really effective drones at the moment are Ukrainians. Whether we have a hand in building them or not, we didn't make it, we didn't battle test it, and we certainly shouldn't be taking credit for it. Lexicon, go ahead, my dear.
Yeah, I was just to forgive the private conversation. I DM'd another. He's saying that he's in Kyiv, I guess. I just wanted to ask if he means that, and is he going to the event this evening, to the protest? Because I am.
Unfortunately, I'm busy.
Oh,
but I will be around. So maybe
anyway.
tomorrow or something. Yeah. So yeah, not today, but maybe tomorrow or another day.
Yeah. Oh, let's in our DMs. All right, we can communicate that way.
That's okay. We're just here to help people make friends and, you know, put people together. We do it all the time. So yeah, lovely stuff. Thank you. So, mobilization. Zelenskyy has talked about this in the last 24 hours. That Russia is asking North Korea for another 30,000 troops. And I'm going to say that his information is probably correct here. Since June, preparations have been underway in Russia's Voronezh region to receive more troops from North Korea. And it looks as though they're going to get them. Because North Korea is already also preparing to transfer additional launchers for ballistic missiles to Russia. Now, I'd just like to point out that North Korea, that they really do like to threaten their neighbour in South Korea, don't they? And you know what they're getting out of this? They're getting experience, and they're getting development, which they've never been able to do before as a result of this experience. And it's worth noting that Russia is now helping North Korea to learn how to wage war better than they did previously. I mean, you know, obviously not to certain standards, but certainly better than they did previously. They're helping them improve their weapons and gain combat experience, because usually these guys as well are not sent directly to the front line. Usually they are operators and what have you. And also, they're actually quite good with a shotgun at shooting down drones. It is worth noting that these people actually do get trained in shotguns and things like that. All of this is a threat to everyone in Asia who is in range of North Korean missiles. So just to be aware, I mean, you know, Kim likes to throw around a missile every now and again, doesn't he? If people aren't paying him enough attention, he's like, look, I've got missiles, and he fires one into the sea. Well, what if the next time he fires one, it isn't into the sea? I'm just, you know, putting it out there. There is growing discussion amongst analysts and intelligence sources about what we've believed for some time, that Russia is preparing for a broader mobilization. And this could be one of the ways that they hope to fill some of their shortfall, because they're going to have a massive shortfall, mainly because of their staggering losses. And it would help them avoid some potential public unrest at home as well, because, you know, domestic unrest is something that they really have been trying to avoid, you know, because Putin doesn't want to die. I get that, but I wish somebody would just pop him off and then say, oh dear, it's totally his fault. We apologize. We're going to go home now. That would be a perfect way to end this war for the Russians, who don't like to keep losing their wow berries, you know, just saying. That also suggests, though, that while seeking these 30,000 North Korean troops and the additional ballistic missile launchers, that Ukraine has really got to up their game with regards to ballistic interception. And so, you know, we are literally in a race against time at this point to the autumn, where Russia's already gone all in anyway, but when they really do move all in with all the cards that they have, and, you know, they do unfortunately have some. So, yeah, let's just keep that in mind, that if we don't double down on helping Ukraine as much as possible, as quickly as possible, this is just going to get bigger and worse. And we really do need to consider that. We really need to consider what's going on. Now, I do have to, again, give props to Tokayev from Kazakhstan, the Kazakh president. He has basically been really cheeky right into Putin's face over and over again, and basically challenged him to do something about it, and Putin has done nothing about it. And I just think this is a beautiful thing to watch this guy basically slap Putin, and Putin have to swallow it because he's not in a position to do anything in particular in this direction. So the Kazakh president, during a meeting with Putin recently, proposed freezing of the war and said that it is supported by the international community. And he said, all of this needs to be stopped because continuing only benefits Russia's adversaries. So he's putting it in a way that, you know, he's saying, oh, Putin, you're doing your adversaries a favor right now by rubbing yourself down to a nub. You know, he's presenting him with the truth, but he's trying to put it in a way that, you know, Putin might accept. And it turns out that Putin is the only obstacle to peace at this point. And he's basically saying, you should remove the obstacles to peace. Is he talking of Putin himself? Now, obviously, freezing the conflict now, as I've said earlier, will only benefit Muscovy. Ukraine needs to finish the job. But what Tokayev has done here is publicly told Putin that his war is lost without actually saying, you're a fucking loser, right to his face. Although he kind of did. Putin's obviously not going to take his advice, but he was basically saying, well, you can't continue like this because everybody is watching you die, and you're going to continue dying, and you're not going to get any stronger. And so, maybe you should freeze this conflict right now in order to preserve yourself. And he's giving him technically good advice, but he's saying, you're losing, you loser. And if you don't stop, you're going to lose even harder. And I quite appreciate that. I think that's quite funny. So, Tokayev seems to be one of the only people that gets away with saying this quite clearly to him. Now, it's not only them losing militarily, of course. I said they're rubbing themselves down to a nub. The banks have turned to the central bank, this is in the Moscow Times, and asked for 2 trillion rubles to help prop them up after a wave of customers, a massive wave of customers, have withdrawn cash from the banks. It's not a bank run, it's a special bankruptcy operation. And no matter how many times you print more money, it's not going to help. I'm sure they can probably add some zeros to the banknotes when they print more money as well. That's always useful, isn't it? Now, people's credit cards are no longer working that well either because, well, there's internet disconnections all over the place. And, debit cards even don't work. So even when they've got the money, they can't spend it. So they have to go and get cash. They're being forced to. They're literally forcing their own bank run by fucking up their own internet. And so the banks have no money. And this is one of the reasons why they've had to stop selling these OFZ bonds, because the banks have no money to buy the bonds. Because that's the only people who are buying them. It's just a circular route to bankruptcy at this point. So they can't buy any state obligations. They can print more money, but do you know what happens when you print more money? You end up with, even, digitally print more money, you end up with that money being seriously devalued, and then there's nothing left. You got the guy walking down the street with a wheelbarrow full of banknotes, which has happened before, almost as though they love a little bit of history repeating. There's a song in there. So yeah, this is just another day where everything is going down the toilet at a alarming rate. At an alarming rate. So there's a little bit of fun for you here before I bring something quite serious and somber. So let's have a little chuckle first. Putin's horoscope. Yes, for the 26th of July, 2026. Here it is. There is a risk of over-talking and revealing your secrets. What you shouldn't do on this day is sign any contracts without a lawyer, argue about politics on social media, or drive when tired. Also note, Lukashenko's horoscope advises him to plant plants, I'm assuming they mean potatoes. Is it too late to plant potatoes at this time of year? I don't know. Anyway, so let's see if any replies come to that. I just wonder. So secrets revealed, eh? We'll see. Meanwhile, in Russian media, there is a general advice on what not to do today because, you know, they like to produce these strange and wonderful requirements. So you should not be stingy. If somebody asks for money, you should give it. So the banks are asking the central bank for money, yeah? If you fall asleep before... Oh, no, you should not fall asleep before sunset because if you do, it's bad luck. You should wait until the sun has set below the horizon. The only problem is that Russian nights are now sort of cloudy with a chance of drones, so maybe they won't get any sleep at all. Oh, well. You should not make any major purchases or deals. Or perhaps you should, I don't know. Oh, yes. No, it's extremely unfavourable. Extremely unfavourable. Sorry, I was just checking what the byline was. Extremely unfavourable day for making purchases, taking out loans or borrowing money. Although earlier on it said, don't be stingy. So, don't borrow money, but if somebody asks you to borrow money, you should give it them. It's believed that money borrowed today will slip through your fingers quickly, and any items you purchase will break. Well, there's something to be said for Russians' quality of build there. So, you know, there's that. It is a dangerous omen if you trip in a threshold. It portends trouble. You should enter a house slowly and be mindful of your steps. Okay. I kind of love these things because they're all very strange. Weddings and boisterous celebrations. This day is dedicated to stern archangels and physical labor. Fun and weddings must be postponed. A marriage on the July the 26th will be fragile and full of discord. Well, isn't that just a general Russian marriage where they, you know, beat each other? There was a lovely video the other day of a couple who were having a party, and their poor kids were sat in the middle of the pair of them getting absolutely drunk as skunks. And a little bit later on, they have the police turn up, and they're stood outside talking to the police. And they've obviously been raucous enough that somebody bothered to call the police. And she stood there with her phone up, talking, like saying, oh, right, so the police have turned up now. Look, my husband beat me. I've got a black eye. So maybe she called the police. I don't know. And then a little bit later, an Orthodox priest turns up to try and rectify the situation. And he's absolutely shit-faced as well. Drunk as a lord. So just another day in Russia, apparently. Brilliant. So no boisterous celebrations, folks. Otherwise, the police and the priest will turn up. And one last one here. You should not mock the desires of others. So if somebody has a dream, you shouldn't mock them. You could prematurely alienate yourself, or permanently, alienate yourself from good fortune. I think the Russians already did that, didn't they? They already permanently alienated themselves from good fortune. Yes, they absolutely did. Now, Firefella, if you want to say anything, now's your time, because I'm going to pull up something that Nuther has written as a tribute to the fallen, his fallen friends in particular, the Ukrainian heroes who died in this Russian attack in Bucha, including the head of the Stratcom Centre's wife. It's quite poignant, and I'm probably going to cry, so, you know, get out whatever you need to now, because very shortly after I've said it, we're shutting.
No, absolutely not, mockers. Tissues at the ready, everyone. Crack on.
Okay, so this is actually, it's titled za Volyu, for freedom. For the coffee gone cold on the sill, for a suitcase that holds a whole life still, for the streets grown quiet, the falling snow, for the last look before we go, for the dog that still waits by the door, for flowers, for the small talk from before, for a birthday I'll keep till the day we win, for the open road just driving in, for the name on my phone that will not ring, for a wedding day I replay to remember everything, for the bear on a bed no child has pressed, for the songs they asked for, not tears, at their rest, for the seeds pressed soft in an enemy's hand, so something might grow where he falls on our land, for freezing but free, for weary but whole, for the glass we mend back whole by the morning's toll, for wait for us, we will all come home, for the kitchen table quarrels, no one alone, for a home, even ruined, I still long to know, for a child who dreams, told you, for a sky, no more sirens. Oh, that last line, but he killed me. Thanks for that, Mother.
Thank you.
Well done, Mockers. Well done.
I really tried to hold it together, and that last line absolutely killed me. So yeah, Nother has posted that on his timeline, and it is a really beautiful dedication to all the Ukrainians who are striving, and this is why we need to be there. This is why we need to do everything we can to ensure their survival, because they are fighting a war so that we don't have to. And they are hurting. My God, they are hurting. And we need to do everything we can to ensure their victory. And I am done. I am done for the day. Sorry.
No, absolutely well done, Mockers. And thank you, Nother. That was beautiful. And all I've got to say is Slava Ukraini. See you all tomorrow.
Slava.
Slava Nazi.
Smert Baraham.
Murtvalam.
And I'm not going to add anything in addition other than say girl Pachba. Doprehemora.
Optimus.
Papachimus.
Join us and Volya Radio.